He got reincarnated with a totally broken ability combining theory and brute force to calculate the defeat of his enemies before the first hit even lands. In his past life, he was nothing but a terminally ill patient trapped in a bed, but now reborn as Louis Carril, he is a commoner with a perfect body who entered the elite academy just to break every single rule. While the nobles flex their magic and status, he uses pure physics and martial arts to absolutely wreck anyone who sleeps on him. He doesn't just withstand the pressure from the grandmasters, he dishes it back twofold, but the real secret is dark. There is a curse of fury inside him, and when he awakens, he does the impossible, fusing opposite elements to create a magic that has never existed in history. It all begins with our protagonist remembering his past life, where he was sick and weak. His biggest dream was to have a healthy body to become a martial artist, and it seems he got his wish. Now the young man is at the #1 academy in the Empire, and is amazed by how huge the place is. Alongside his new classmates, one of them challenges him to a fight to see his true power. During the battle, Louis shows he's clearly superior, telling his opponent he's way too weak. In this new life, he finally got the strong and healthy body he always dreamed of having. On top of that, he can combine theory and strength to calculate the outcome of any battle. With all these powers, the protagonist believes he will finally achieve his dreams. But he was very mistaken. His body is taken over by a strange energy, and the boy enters a state of uncontrollable rage. Someone then explains that all of this is happening because of a curse he carries. A desperate girl yells for Louis not to give in to this curse. When the protagonist regains consciousness, he's frightened and wonders what he has just done. The boy then wonders if, even in this life, he is destined to lose to fate once again. A voice calls him a monster and tells him to simply give up fighting. The voice continues, saying he has the same destiny as that hero from the past. At that moment, the boy's heart begins to pulse with a very sinister energy. But Louis refuses to accept this and says he won't surrender to a cruel fate. He shouts that if this is his destiny, then he'll just destroy it with his own two hands. The story then goes back to the year 594 at the Candria Arcanist Academy. Arriving at the academy, the protagonist is impressed by how incredible the place is. There, the 13-year-old boy named Louis Carril notices the enormous number of candidates. Suddenly, someone starts shouting our protagonist's name, and he turns to see who it is. Then his parents come running, complaining that the boy is too fast and telling him not to leave them behind. His mother asks if he brought his ID and the hair dye so he won't draw attention. She gets worried and says she heard that some students end up getting taken out for any reason. But his father, named Julian, says that magic is the only way to solve the boy's problem. Besides, this is the only academy in the Northern Empire that accepts commoners in the entrance exam. The Candria Academy was truly the best choice they could have made at that moment. This institution was founded by the royal family and is one of the 10 best academies in the Empire. There, the strongest grandmasters in the Empire teach their students everything they know. In the last 10 years, several non-noble guardians have emerged from academies like this one, and most of these powerful warriors graduated from this very educational institution. With this, Julian is sure that this is the perfect environment for Louis to learn about magic. The boy's mother agrees, and he says he needs to become a grandmaster no matter what. The young man then reveals that he wants to get stronger to gain possession of the church orphanage. His mother, Lucille, is completely surprised by her son's determination. She feels guilty for not being able to heal him, but Julian comforts her, saying she already does so much. Louis then tells his mother that he's only alive because of her, and that he is very grateful for everything. The protagonist then remembers his past life where not even his parents liked him. Despite everything, he never lost his passion for martial arts and continued his studies. With that, he became a scholar, and his research contributed to the fighting industry. But a man stole his thesis and accused him of plagiarism, saying a sick person didn't deserve glory. In the end, even his parents abandoned him, and on his deathbed, he wished for a family that would love him. He also wanted to have his own life, and it seems his wish has finally come true. The scene then changes to the past where a young nun is worried about taking in a child. Little Louis wakes up confused, as he was supposed to be gone, and the woman fears he will bring disaster. But she decides the baby is innocent and can't abandon him, so she names him Louis Carril. Now the protagonist has a family that loves him and a healthy body to live fully. Back in the present, a noble shoves his mother and yells for the commoner to get out of his way. Louis and Julian rush to help Lucilla, who fell to the ground from the man's push. The noble then mocks the boy's dream, saying a commoner could never become a grandmaster. Disgusted, he says he touched a filthy commoner and hopes his luck hasn't run out. Hearing this, our protagonist fills with rage and gets ready to attack the nobles. But Julian grabs his son's arm to stop him from doing something reckless. His father tells him to focus on the exam, which is the most important thing at that moment. His mother also reminds him of his promise not to cause trouble and asks him to hang in there. At his parents' request, the boy calms down but is still very frustrated with the situation. He then apologizes to his mother, and she comforts him with a touch on his shoulder. The nobles walk away, calling them trash and saying they're going to get their registration numbers. Suddenly, the crowd stirs and shouts for everyone to make way for a called Lord Cain. Then Cain Aranca appears, the heir of the Aranca family, and everyone is impressed by his noble appearance. Cain looks in our protagonist's direction with an air of superiority, irritating Louis. With a determined look, the young man promises that he will show his worth to all those nobles. But he turns to his mother and reassures her, saying he will pass the exam no matter what. The boy states with absolute certainty that he will become a grandmaster and surpass everyone. He is determined to learn magic to show his power to those who humiliated him. In his new life, he will become the strongest so he can protect the ones he loves. The boy looks at his family's picture and vows to protect everything that is precious to him. His parents are worried because only 30 people pass, and there are 20,000 candidates this year. But Julian knows his son is more stubborn than anyone and won't give up easily. The father explains that their duty as a family is to support the boy in his decisions. Arriving at the exam site, Louis notices that all the other candidates are older than him. A man then floats in the air and announces that the Academy's entrance exam will begin. He introduces himself as Aronian Smith, the Academy's director and supervisor of the entrance exam. The candidates are surprised that the director and grandmaster himself will be administering the test. In this world, there are 6 classifications for martial artists and arcanists, starting with apprentice. The title of Grandmaster is the 3rd highest, and those who hold it belong to the privileged class. The director then points to a staircase and says that the first test is to climb it. He continues, explaining that those who pass this first phase will be placed behind the upperclassmen. In total, there are 1,000 passes, and only those who grab one can proceed to the next test. As soon as the passes run out, the exam ends, leaving everyone else behind. With a shout to begin, the director signals the start of the test, and everyone runs desperately. Some confident candidates shout that the exam is a piece of cake and charge at the upperclassmen. But the upperclassman greets them with a sinister smile and welcomes the examinees. And a red aura explodes from him. The power is so great that everyone's vision becomes completely distorted for a moment. The candidates are caught by surprise and are left wondering what happened. Immediately, several numbers are announced, and many candidates are disqualified all at once. Those who remain wonder in fear if that was an attack and recognize the upperclassmen. Louis then realizes that what he felt at that moment was a pure intent to end things. The other candidates are confused and can't understand what just happened. Then our protagonist explains to the others that it wasn't an attack, but rather his aura. The upperclassman was releasing his aura to intimidate all the candidates at once. The protagonist realizes that anyone with a weak will wouldn't be able to withstand this pressure. Many of the weaker candidates ended up fainting just from the fear they felt. The upperclassman then turns to Louis and says that he seems to have some courage, at least. But he adds that there's no room for commoners because there are many talented ones. Our protagonist is not intimidated and faces the upperclassman as an equal, showing his courage. With a challenging look, the upperclassman says that since the boy is here, he'll see what he's capable of. He then vows to make the boy kneel. With that, the other candidates scream in pain and beg him to stop the attack. But our protagonist remains standing unaffected by the upperclassman's aura. Then Louis asks with a smile if this is all of his intent to end things. To our protagonist, this is nothing, as he has faced worse things in the past. The boy has fought against countless beasts and monsters to train his combat skills. Facing the intent to end things from wild creatures was his daily training. That's why the upperclassman's aura had no effect on him at that moment. The upperclassman is completely shocked to see that the boy was not affected by his aura. With a confident smile, the young man says that it simply won't work on him. Then the protagonist gets ready to show what a true intent to end things is. The boy is determined to show all the nobles what a real intent is. He is going to teach them what it means to feel true fear for the first time. His aura expands throughout the entire area with impressive force and pressure. The other nobles who are watching are completely shocked by the boy's power. Even the upperclassman is terrified by the immense pressure he feels on his body. The protagonist's fist approaches the upperclassman's face, who is frozen in fear, but Louis stops the attack and stares down the noble. The upperclassman is completely shocked and speechless at the strength shown by the boy. The other candidates wonder how a commoner could withstand and even attack an upperclassman. Without caring about the confusion, Louis simply walks past the noble to continue the exam. The boy then approaches the board where the passes are and prepares to take his. He reaches out his arm and finally grabs one of the admission passes. But the upperclassman doesn't accept defeat and shouts angrily that he won't let it slide. Full of fury, the noble charges at our protagonist with everything he has, releasing his energy. Seeing the attack coming his way, the young man prepares to fight back with all his strength, and both attacks collide. But he is shocked to see that a mere commoner blocked his strike without using magic. The director then appears and holds back the upperclassman, saying the boy passed the first exam. He scolds the noble and says the academy treats all examinees equally. The upperclassman bows an apology and thanks the director for his wise words. Aronian then congratulates Louis Carril for successfully passing the first phase of the test. Suddenly, he notices the boy's hair color and says that's a bit concerning. The protagonist is confused by the director's comment and asks what he means by that. With a serious look, the director places his hand on the boy's shoulder and stares at him intently. He then offers a special magic potion to hide his unique features. The young man doesn't understand what the director is planning, but decides to focus on the next phase of the exam. With that, he turns and walks towards the location of the academy's second test. As Louis walks away, the upperclassman glares at him with a look full of hatred and resentment. He doesn't understand why the director protected a commoner and swears he will remember his name. Arriving at the location of the second test, a voice announces that the exam will begin shortly. Of the initial 20,000 candidates, only 1,000 remain, and most are nobles with elite educations. Then a group of nobles walks past our protagonist, staring at him with contempt and arrogance. One of them threatens him, saying that next time, no one will show up to help him. But our protagonist is unfazed and stares back at the noble with a cold, defiant look. The noble continues to taunt him, saying he only passed because of the academy director's help. With a smirk on his face, the young man simply says that the noble is a complete idiot. The noble is completely shocked and furious at the boy's unexpected response. Louis then explains that the Grandmaster has much better judgment than they do. Angrily, the noble gets closer and asks if the boy wants to get beaten right there. The protagonist just smiles confidently, accepting the noble's challenge. The noble is blinded by rage and prepares to attack the boy with all his strength. He shouts that he's going to finish the commoner and lunges forward, with a punch aimed straight at Louis's face. But our protagonist remains calm. With a swift movement, he prepares a strike with his fingers to hit a vital point. His attack hits the noble's fist dead on, paralyzing its movement in mid-air. The noble is terrified as he realizes his body simply won't move anymore. The young man used a spiral point strike to disrupt the noble's meridian and paralyze him. With a single blow, the noble is sent flying with force as his friends watch. His companions shout in desperation as they see their friend being defeated in such a way. The noble's body hits the ground with a heavy impact, surprising everyone there. The other candidates look on in shock, unable to comprehend the commoner's strength. A friend runs to help him and asks if he's okay, but the noble complains of great pain. Desperate, the boy says he can't feel his arm and is terrified by this. Furthermore, he realizes he can't even move his right arm normally. Full of rage, he accuses the protagonist of using poison and threatens to report him. But our hero corrects him, saying it wasn't poison but martial arts. The boy explains that he was holding back as his mother asked, but that he has his limits. Then he says that only those prepared to take a punch can throw one at others. Suddenly, Kane grabs the protagonist's arm and reminds him that they are in the middle of an exam. Kane then asks if he is okay with the idea of being disqualified because of the fight. The boy stares at Kane for a moment, seeming to consider the consequences of his actions. The other nobles shout for Kane not to get involved and threaten the protagonist again. Kane then turns to them and asks if they know who he is, telling them to back off. Frightened, the nobles decide to forget the fight and prepare to leave. The group then turns and walks away from the scene, leaving the trouble behind for now. But before leaving, the noble says that commoners are trash and tells Lewis to remember that. The protagonist thinks that all nobles are the same, using their status to do whatever they want. Then Kane approaches and compliments him, saying he is strong and brave for having stood up to the others. With a smile, the blonde noble extends his hand and suggests they form a team for the test. Suddenly, a group of girls appears and asks if Lord Kane is looking for partners. At this, a crowd forms around him, with everyone begging to be chosen for his team. The others comment that teaming up with him is a sure pass because he is from the Aranka family. Lewis simply ignores all the commotion with an expression of total disinterest on his face. At that moment, a giant magic circle appears in the center of the arena with a blue energy. The director appears floating and congratulates everyone for passing the willpower test. He then announces with a smile that the next phase will finally be the test of power. Suddenly, glowing marks appear on the chests of all the candidates, who are left confused. Kane is startled to realize that it is an Earth attribute mark on his body. The blonde boy is completely shocked and can't understand what is happening there. His body suddenly feels heavy, and he almost falls to the ground along with the other candidates. Then a huge golden magic circle activates on the floor of the entire battle arena. The director explains that the second exam will be a fight under the influence of his Earth magic. The nobles complain that it's impossible to fight with a Grandmaster's magic affecting them. One of them then points in shock at someone who is walking as if it were nothing. It's Kane who, despite the difficulty, manages to stay on his feet under the immense magical pressure. With an expression of effort, he looks ahead, surprised by what he is seeing. The person Kane was seeing was Louis, who was managing to walk despite the magical pressure. The young man steps onto the stage, shocking all the candidates present. The director then smiles at the boy and says he was the first to arrive once again. The others recognize the boy and are shocked by the intense pressure he is enduring. Kane can barely stand and wonders how the commoner is handling this pressure so easily. The director then warns that only those who are standing will be able to participate in the next test. With a wave of his hand, the Grandmaster prepares to summon something into the battle arena. Then an arsenal of weapons appears, and he tells the candidates to choose whatever they want. As a sword is thrown, with a quick and firm movement, the boy's hand grips the hilt of one of the swords. The protagonist then grabs 2 swords and shows he is ready for the upcoming combat. The other candidates can barely handle the weight of the weapons, and the director gives a final warning. He then asks if everyone is ready and gives the signal for the start of the final exam. With a smile on his face, the director orders everyone to release the bonded slimes. The candidates look around, confused as they can't see anything different in the arena. They wonder what bonded slimes are, but no one there knows the right answer. But our protagonist notices something and looks up with a very attentive gaze. Suddenly, several blue spheres begin to fall from the sky towards the candidates. One of the spheres hits the ground and transforms into a very strange blue creature. Then everyone realizes that those creatures are the slimes the director mentioned earlier. The rules are explained: blocking an attack is worth 1 point, dodging is worth 2, and defeating a monster is worth 5. The director then advises that the ranking will be by points, and only the top 100 will pass to the next test. Our protagonist reflects on the difficulty, since only 100 people will be able to pass. Suddenly, a giant slime screams and starts launching several smaller copies of itself in all directions. One of the candidates scoffs, saying that slimes are low-level monsters, and that it will be easy to defeat them. With a confident smile, the boy advances with his sword, ready to easily secure his 5 points. He then runs at full speed towards one of the small creatures, yelling for it to receive his attack. But the blue creature suddenly changes its expression and reveals a very intimidating aura of power. At this, the little monster fires a powerful energy beam at the candidate who underestimated it. The noble's expression changes from confidence to pure panic upon seeing the small creature's power. With no time to react, the slime's attack hits the boy's face dead on, sending him flying. The other candidates are shocked to see what happened and realize the real danger of that test. Several slime attacks begin to fly across the arena, catching everyone else by surprise. The nobles are completely terrified by the unexpected power of those small blue creatures. One of the boys shouts for everyone to be careful as more and more slimes continue to fall from the sky. With that, the arena becomes a true battlefield with explosions and candidates flying everywhere. Chaos takes over the place, and many participants are quickly defeated by the slime's attacks. From above, the examiners begin to announce the scores of the candidates who managed to react to the attacks. One of the examiners comments to the director that this year's exam has nobles from famous families. She believes that because of this, a new record might be broken as the battle continues in the arena. An examiner comments that this year there are excellent commoners and remembers the boy the director helped. The director smiles and says the boy is interesting and might show something incredible. But the other examiner is concerned about what he is seeing in the battle arena. He points out that the young man hasn't moved a single step since the beginning of the test. A noble scoffs at the protagonist and says the slimes are too fast for a commoner. He continues, saying that a commoner is always a commoner and will soon be defeated. With that, a large sphere of energy is fired in our hero's direction. The attack approaches quickly, but the boy remains still, showing no reaction. With a calm look, the boy dodges the attack. With a minimal movement, he dodges the attack, leaving the other candidate shocked. The noble who provoked him can't believe it and wonders how he managed to dodge. But the attacks don't stop, and another sphere of energy flies across the battle arena. This sphere hits another participant head-on, throwing him far away with the impact. Our protagonist then gets a serious look and prepares for what's next. Suddenly, several slime attacks begin to rain down on the boy. The noble who provoked him smiles and says there's no way he can dodge so many attacks. The protagonist closes his eyes and concentrates to feel the movement of the attacks. Then he begins to remember one of his most rigorous training sessions from the past. In his memory, he is in a snowy field with his training partners. They are holding rocks and talking about how dangerous it would be if they were hit by them. But the young man tells him not to worry because he wants to test something new. Then his friends shout for him to be sure to dodge and throw the rocks with force. With that, a shower of rocks flies at high speed towards our protagonist. His eyes then glow with a blue energy, and he focuses completely on the attacks. He then reveals that in his past life, he managed to formulate a new hypothesis. The boy trained to transmit information quickly from the parietal lobe to the cerebellum. If he calculated the trajectories and reacted instantly, he could deal with any attack. Back in training, the boy begins to collect the data from all the rocks. With the data in mind, the next phase is to calculate the trajectory of each one. And the final phase is to simply dodge all the attacks with precise movements. His friends are completely shocked by the incredible skill he demonstrated. The boy then wipes his sweat and thinks to himself that his new power is incredible. His companions run up to him and ask how he did that and that it was really cool. He then explains that the name of the technique is void combat calculation, leaving them confused. The young man says it's a technique that can predict the outcome of any battle. Back in the present, the boy is surrounded by the slime's attacks in the exam arena. His eyes glow, and he prepares to use his technique to predict all the attacks. Several formulas appear around the slimes as he calculates everything perfectly. The trajectory of each of the monsters is analyzed at an impressive speed. At the center of it all, our protagonist prepares to show his true power. He realizes that the slimes have power and speed, but only attack in a straight line. With this, the boy calculates the angle and speed to predict the trajectory of all of them. Then Lewis begins to move through the arena with impressive and precise speed. The young man dodges all the attacks with ease, saying that it's a piece of cake. By dodging 4 times, he has already scored 8 points and prepares for the next step. The protagonist then grips his sword firmly and prepares for the counterattack. With a determined look, he says that now it's his turn to finally attack the monsters. The boy uses his sword, cutting martial art, and defeats several slimes at once. Kane, who is watching, is completely shocked by the commoner's skill. The examiners are also surprised and comment on the boy's incredible perception. One of them says that the young man's perception rivals that of an experienced fighter. Seeing this, Kane smiles and decides that he definitely needs to team up with that boy. Suddenly, our protagonist senses something and notices a new attack coming his way. He then turns and sees that another slime is coming at him with full force. The boy prepares to secure another 5 points and uses his piercing technique. With a quick and precise movement, he lunges forward to hit the monster right in the middle. But suddenly, someone interferes and he turns, annoyed, asking who stole his prey. It was Kane who, with a smile on his face, says that what he stole wasn't the protagonist's. Then the blonde noble turns and, with an elegant movement of his sword, he attacks. With a single, precise strike, he cuts the slime in half, finishing the little creature. Meanwhile, the other candidates continue to fight desperately against the blue creatures. Kane then says that he stole the prey from those candidates, not from our protagonist. He introduces himself as Kane and invites him to steal points from the others together. Our protagonist stares at the noble with a serious and very suspicious look at the proposal. Kane then says he just wants a high rank and proposes a competition between the two of them. With a challenging smile, he asks the boy to show all of his true power. The young man smiles confidently and says that since the noble insists, he will accept. With that, he grips his sword tighter and prepares for the start of the competition. Lewis then proposes that the loser does whatever the winner says, leaving Kane surprised. The two stand back to back, ready to finally begin the great contest. A group of archers notices that the two have teamed up and sees a great opportunity. The group's leader then smiles sinisterly and prepares to attack the pair. Suddenly, a slime is thrown in their direction, catching everyone completely by surprise. He then shouts for his companions to get ready and draws his bowstring. At that moment, a sphere of blue energy flies towards the competing duo. Our protagonist notices the attack and his eyes glow with his special ability. He then moves quickly and positions himself in front of Kane to block the attack. But that wasn't all, because several arrows are also fired in their direction, hitting the protagonist. Kane is completely shocked to see Lewis shielding him from the attack with his body. The archer then celebrates with a confident smile, thinking he landed the attack perfectly. But our protagonist just lets out a mocking laugh, showing that he felt nothing. As the dust settles, the archer is completely stunned by what he is seeing. It turns out that Lewis caught the arrows with his bare hands without any difficulty. The nobles are terrified and wonder how a commoner could react so quickly. Kane then asks if he is okay, but the boy says that those attacks were nothing. Furious, the noble shouts at his friends and tells them to aim for the aranca hair. The archer prepares a special attack called Double Arrow with a very sinister aura. Thus, 2 arrows fly at high speed towards the duo, one of them being magical. The young noble tries to defend himself but realizes the attack's level is too high for him. The arrow with the dark aura advances with truly impressive speed and power. The blonde boy is frozen in fear as he sees the magic arrow about to hit him. Suddenly, a red trail appears in the air, indicating that the attack has hit someone. Once again, Lewis stepped in front of the noble and caught the arrow with his own hand. Kane panics about his hand, but the young man says their real target was him. The examiners notice the intent of the attack, and one of them suggests disqualification, but the director denies it, saying they will lose, and asks them to prepare healing potions. Meanwhile, in the arena, the protagonist asks for Kane's name and calls him to action. With a smile, he holds the sword like a bat and asks if the noble knows baseball. Then the boy uses his sword to bat a slime towards the enemy archers. Using his special ability, the boy calculates the perfect trajectory for his attack. His eyes glow with a blue energy, and he prepares to swing with all his might. Then Lewis hits the slime with his sword as if it were a real baseball bat. The creature flies across the arena at high speed towards the group of enemy archers. They look up in terror as they realize the monster is heading straight for them. The slime hits the group's leader head-on, sending him flying with the force of the impact. His companions are also caught in the explosion and fly together into the stands. The noble then falls to the ground completely defeated and is disqualified from the entrance exam. Our protagonist celebrates his first point, and Kane finds the commoner's game interesting. The other 2 archers are furious about their leader's defeat and shout in anger. One of them looks around and wonders where the boy went, as he suddenly disappeared. Kane then appears in the air and gets the noble's attention, telling him to look up. Meanwhile, our hero is already preparing to launch the second slime and secure more points. The blue monster hits the second archer's face dead on with no chance of defense. With that, he is also disqualified and thrown far away by the force of the attack. The last remaining noble panics and can't believe what he is seeing. Lewis then appears behind him with a smile and says that he is the last on the list. The boy threatens him, saying the upperclassman won't forgive him for this at all. But suddenly, Kane steps on the noble's foot, making him trip as if it were an accident. With the noble on the ground, Kane tells him to be more careful next time, with a smile on his face. Kane thanks him for the help and asks if our protagonist's hand is okay after all. With a handshake, Lewis says he is pretty decent for an elite noble. The blonde then tells him not to compare him with the others and reveals he is from the Aranka family. It is explained that the great families are powerful clans with many grandmasters. Lewis reflects that there are various types of nobles as the duo continues to fight. Then another group of candidates gets angry with a commoner's interference in the fight. They shout in anger that they won't let the duo score any more points. With that, the two prepare for battle, releasing a powerful aura from their bodies. The nobles advance, shouting that commoners should disappear forever from their world. Suddenly, a group of candidates notices that Lord Kane is the main target, so they decide to help the heir and charge at the lower class nobles. At this, the arena becomes a battlefield, and Kane tells the boy to be careful. A girl and little boy watch the fight, and she says that things are getting interesting. She then calls out to Miliana and says to make the nobles regret everything they've done. Lewis realizes he has become a target for many and that scoring more points will be a problem. He then turns and notices that several slimes have suddenly appeared in the battle arena. The little boy uses his staff to make one of the candidates trip and fall to the ground. Meanwhile, Miliana uses her weapon to launch a powerful area attack on the others. Suddenly, a redhead with a giant hammer appears, having defeated several candidates on his own. With a smile on his face, he shouts that this is all great and a lot of fun. He says that hitting people is much more fun than fighting weak slimes. With a battle cry, the redhead spins his giant hammer with all his might in the arena. The boy then starts spinning faster and faster, ready to unleash a powerful attack. With his eyes glowing, he shouts for everyone to get out of his way as quickly as possible. He then unleashes an area attack that sends all the candidates flying with the impact. After the attack, the redhead stands still with his hammer on his shoulder, looking very victorious. With that, several candidates are left lying on the ground, completely defeated and out of combat. One of the examiners asks if they should stop, but the director says their energy is good. But another instructor is worried about so many nobles being disqualified in the same exam. The director says the academy has its rules and not to worry about public opinion. He then goes to the arena to signal the end of the exam for good. With that, the director announces that the second exam is finally over for everyone. He then says that the scores and rankings will be announced shortly for everyone. With the end of the exam, the earth magic dissipates, and one of the nobles falls to the ground exhausted. The examiners then bring healing potions to the candidates who were injured in the fight. Lewis takes a potion and is impressed by the mysterious power it emanates. Kane then approaches and asks what's wrong with our protagonist, who is deep in thought. The noble tells him to relax and that he won't go easy on him even if he wins their bet. The director then announces that the results of the second exam will be revealed to everyone. He then summons a giant magic scroll and Kane asks what Lewis's position was. The nobles mock our protagonist, but the list only showed up to 6th place. The director then announces that the top 5 have broken records, and Miliana Royce is in 5th. To the surprise of many, the hair Kane Aranka was only in 4th place in the test. In 3rd place is the red-haired girl named Faye Durhan, who seems very confident. Lewis then wonders if he was disqualified for having attacked those other nobles. But the 2nd place is announced, and Lewis Carroll appears with 887 points. Kane is completely shocked and asks who that boy is that he has never seen before. The blonde noble remembers that he is the commoner from before, and the young man says that's a secret. Kane accepts his defeat in the bet, and Lewis says he will tell him what he wants after the exam. With that, the glorious 1st place winner is about to be announced to everyone. 1st place, with a record of 888 points, is Neil Gunn. The redhead smiles and says there are interesting people around and not to disappoint him. The others are shocked with 2 commoners at the top and say that Neil is too strong. Meanwhile, Miliana looks at Faye, who is standing still holding her enormous spear. The red-haired girl then says she would love to have a battle against the 1st place winner of the exam. A group of nobles is angry for having lost to mere commoners in the competition. One of them then shouts that they are a complete disgrace to the entire nobility of the empire. The instructor informs the director that it is the first time that commoners from an orphanage have placed at the top. With a serious look, the director asks if he knows why the association takes care of orphans. It is then revealed that true strength has nothing to do with someone's social status. The director then tells everyone who passed the 2nd exam to proceed to the next location. Kane comments that Lewis came close to 1st place, and the boy just replies that he doesn't know. Arriving in a forest, the candidates discover that the 3rd and final exam will be there. The director appears floating and announces that the final test is a battle royale of emblems. He explains that he will distribute emblems, and the upperclassmen will hide them throughout the forest. With that, the objective for everyone is to collect as many emblems as possible using any method. Whoever loses their emblem will be disqualified, and only the top 10 will be admitted. Kane says they will split up and warns Lewis that the highest ranked will be the targets. The protagonist then understands that the rankings were announced precisely to create this situation. With a smile, the director tells him to demonstrate their skills and survive until the end. The boy is determined to win no matter what, as admission is very close to happening. Suddenly, someone approaches from behind and calls him a commoner in a very provocative way. It's one of the nobles he defeated before, who says he has found him to get revenge for the humiliation. But our protagonist just stares at the noble with a cold look, completely unfazed. The noble says that Kane isn't there to protect him, and that no one will help him this time. At this, the young man notices something strange and turns his head with a very alert expression. He then sees that he is surrounded by several other nobles, ready to begin the attack. The boy understands that the examiners must have purposely leaked his location to the others. The noble gets tired of talking and lunges at Lewis with his large axe. He then shouts for the commoner to receive his blow as Lewis prepares to fight back. The noble shouts that the protagonist won't escape and attacks him with his spear to start the fight. Suddenly, 2 more nobles join the attack and throw their spears with all their might in his direction. The boy falls to the ground but manages to recover and senses a new danger coming his way. With a quick spin in the air, the young man uses his sword to create an energy slash and defend himself. Lewis then lands and wonders what that was, as he felt a different energy in the attack. The group's leader shouts for him to simply give up and says the young man will meet his end right there. Even at a disadvantage, our hero dodges all the blows with impressive agility. His sword glows with a green energy as he continues to defend against the enemy attacks. The protagonist realizes that the attacks are coming again and prepares for the next wave of strikes. His sword fills with power, and the boy concentrates for the battle, which is becoming increasingly intense. One of the nobles then shouts for him to receive his attack and advances with a powerful strike from his weapon. The weapon transforms into a wind arrow, and the noble wonders how a commoner will deal with magic. But Lewis dodges once again, and the noble gets angry that he keeps escaping the attacks. The boy then realizes he can't calculate magical trajectories as he does with normal attacks. With a determined look, he decides that if that's the case, he'll need to change his strategy. He will then use Sen no Sen, a technique to counterattack before the enemy hits him. With his eyes glowing, the young man decides to use his enemy's power against them in the fight. Seeing the hesitation, the group's leader shouts for everyone to stop wasting time and attack at once. With that, all the nobles advance together with their weapons drawn, charging at our hero. But the protagonist just gives a confident smile as he already has a plan to defeat them all. With a confident smile, the young man says the timing is perfect to start his counterattack. The noble with the axe celebrates, thinking he has managed to corner our protagonist in the fight. He then brings his axe down with full force, but the boy dodges the blow with a quick and precise movement. Using his sword, the young man blocks the axe and prepares to use the enemy's force to his advantage. The noble is shocked to feel his weapon being thrown aside with impressive force. With that, the axe hits another noble who is attacking from behind Lewis in the battle. At this, one of them screams in pain as he is hit in the eyes by one of the spears that flew during the confusion. From a treetop, another noble launches a powerful green energy attack in his direction. But in the blink of an eye, our protagonist appears right behind him, to the attacker's surprise. The boy then uses him as a shield, and the magic arrow hits him head-on, causing great damage. The noble falls to the ground, defeated and furious, while the young man picks up his spear to continue the fight. With the new weapon in hand, the protagonist prepares to show off his skills with the spear. He then throws the weapon with absurd force towards another enemy. The attack hits a tree head-on, and the explosion sends the noble who is there flying far away. The boy then starts moving at high speed and defeats the remaining nobles with ease. After defeating them all, the nobles' emblems fly into the sky as a reward for the victory. With a quick movement, our protagonist catches the emblems in the air and holds them firmly. He then turns to the defeated and says he will take their emblems as a prize for the fight. Suddenly, a stronger noble appears and shouts not to think too much and to attack with full magic. But to everyone's surprise, Kane appears there and asks if the noble was talking to him by any chance. Leaving Lewis surprised by the scene, Kane then says it's a shame, but the noble won't be able to use magic anymore in that exam. Shocked, the man asks why Kane is there since his friends were supposed to be holding him back. The blonde then says he made them tell him the whole plan and that they underestimated the Aranka family. Full of rage, the noble shouts that he doesn't care and that he will finish both of them anyway. But before he could do anything, a crossbow bolt hits him right in the chest. The protagonist then turns to Kane and thanks him for being safe there with him. Kane says they were just low-level nobles and offers the emblems to our hero. He asks if the boy wants help, but Lewis says no and that he solves his own problems. Suddenly, a girl appears, clapping her hands, and says this is the guy she finally acknowledges. The redhead then approaches and, with a serious look, challenges our protagonist to a fight. Kane then explains that she is Faye Durahan, the powerful daughter of one of the Empire's grandmasters. The young man asks if she is his friend, but the noble denies it and says that girl is not his friend. He admits that he has fought her before but let his guard down, so Lewis says he lost the fight. The girl gets annoyed, and Kane says it's better to ignore her so they can go collect more emblems. Hearing this, she calls them cowards and asks if they are running away because they can't win. With that, Lewis accepts the challenge and says he wanted to see how an heir of a great family fights. The redhead then smiles and says that to be fair, she will fight without using any magic. Then Faye lunges forward with a jump and prepares her special attack called Crushing Holy Spear. Our protagonist's eyes glow with a blue energy as he prepares for combat. The boy manages to block the powerful attack from Faye's spear with a precise and quick movement. The girl is surprised and with a smile on her face, compliments her opponent's incredible skill. Our protagonist also compliments her, saying she is very good and grips the weapon firmly. Faye wastes no time and spins her spear with speed. At the same time, the protagonist lets go of the spear so as not to be cut. With a shout, the redhead tells them to continue the fight and advances with another powerful attack. She then leaps into the air and prepares to use her Holy Spear technique once again. The attack hits the ground and causes a huge explosion, but the boy manages to dodge in time. From a distance, 2 examiners observe the explosion and comment on the intensity of the battle. One of them says that her speed and power are perfect, as expected from a fighting genius, but the other says the commoner is impressive and wonders how long he will last. At that moment, the director appears floating and asks who they think will win the contest. The director then says he likes the boy but that he can't beat Faye, leaving the other confused. He explains with a serious look that a battle is a clash of body and will between fighters. In the arena, the protagonist faces the dust kicked up by the explosion and prepares for the next move. Faye doesn't give up and advances with a sequence of attacks called Swift Holy Spear with all her might. The boy uses his calculation ability to predict the multiple trajectories of her attack. The girl gets frustrated upon realizing that he is managing to defend against all of her strikes. Suddenly, the protagonist finds an opening. The girl's left hand is a weak point. The young man uses his sword to defend against the redhead's attack, who is surprised by his strength. With a firm movement, Lewis manages to deflect the girl's spear to the side with his hand. Faye gets annoyed with the boy's resistance and tries to push him with all her strength, but our boy jumps behind the girl and lands without difficulty. The heiress says that not even the young master Aranka managed to dodge all of her blows, but our protagonist says it's not that hard if you watch very carefully. Annoyed, Faye asks how he will deal with her next attack, and her spear begins to glow. With that, she leaps at high speed. Then the redhead uses her Crescent Fall Holy Spear to attack with full force from above. The boy analyzes the technique and realizes that spears have various attack and defense movements. Combined with the weapon's reach, he understands that the girl's technique is quite problematic. But he also realizes that at the same time, there are several fatal weaknesses in this fighting style. The warrior begins to spin her spear even faster. Our hero then says that one of her vulnerabilities is in close quarters combat. His eyes glow with lightning, and he says that if he times it right, he can get close to her. With that, he decides to counterattack and uses his swordsmanship technique called Sword Dance. But the girl senses his intention and says with a smile that she knows exactly what he's planning. She then shouts that it won't work on her and prepares a quick counterattack. With a footwork movement, the redhead spins her body and prepares for the next attack. The warrior then spins her spear at high speed. Our protagonist is completely shocked by the force and skill of her technique in the fight. The redhead then shouts that her family's holy spear has no weaknesses and tells Lewis to get ready. With that, the spear tornado heads towards the boy, who prepares to defend himself. The examiners praise her talent, as her father only learned this technique at 16. But our hero says it's a shame and prepares to use one of his sword techniques. He then uses his sword to protect himself from the blow. The boy reveals that the spear's other weakness is the high stamina consumption for the user. If he continues to defend with precision, an opening will surely appear in the battle. The girl continues her relentless attack, not realizing what the protagonist was planning. Suddenly, the young man's eyes glow with energy, and he sees the opening he was waiting for. With a shout, he leaps into the air and comes down with his sword to strike the girl head on. But to his surprise, the tip of his sword simply breaks. The piece of the blade falls to the ground, rendering our protagonist's weapon useless at that moment. Lewis is stunned by what happened and can't believe his bad luck in the fight. Faye also seems surprised by the unexpected outcome of their confrontation. She then compliments him and says that if the sword hadn't broken, he would have managed to counterattack. The boy confirms this and says it seems his luck is terrible for that to have happened. The girl asks if he held back, and he says it's a habit to observe before fighting. With a smile, Lewis says that now he will finally fight her seriously in the battle. The redhead points out that the boy's weapon is gone, but he doesn't seem to care. With a movement of his hand, the young man prepares to show his true skill. He then reveals that he is actually much better with his fists and assumes a fighting stance. Faye watches him carefully and thinks that he has no openings in his combat posture. The white-haired boy remains calm and focused, waiting for his opponent's next move. Suddenly, she finds an opportunity and shouts that now is the time to attack with everything she has. With a powerful impulse, the girl advances with impressive speed towards him. The examiners wonder what he did, and the director says his attack pierces defenses. The red-haired warrior shouts that the battle isn't over yet and continues her attack without hesitation. She then throws the broken tip of her spear like a projectile to hit him from a distance. With glowing eyes, she shouts that if one approach doesn't work, she'll try something else. Upon landing, the girl prepares to use an area attack with the rest of her spear. Louis looks up, surprised by his opponent's new strategy in the final battle. Then the redhead creates several copies of herself, and they all advance to attack at the same time. The copies glow with a red energy and rush to surround the commoner from all sides. With that, all attacks concentrate on a single point to defeat him once and for all. But our protagonist just gives a slight smile, showing that he isn't the least bit worried. He then shouts, "So what?" and releases several energy hands to defend against the attack. One of the phantom hands catches the tip of the girl's spear, stopping the blow in mid-air. With a firm grip, the energy hand manages to completely stop the warrior's attack. With that, a large energy explosion occurs, and the astral hands block all the attacks. The red-haired girl is completely shocked and shouts, not understanding what just happened. The director then explains that the boy seems to be stopping the spear's rotation with a special technique. He says he has never seen anything like it, and that a commoner stopping the Durhan technique is incredible. With his eyes glowing, Louis uses his energy hands to push the girl away. The young man then releases a shockwave that throws the heiress back with great force. Faye plants her spear in the ground to stop, raising a huge cloud of dust with the impact. Annoyed with the situation, the girl curses and can't believe she was outmatched in that way. She then gets up and asks what kind of strange technique he used in the fight. Our hero explains that it's a type of parry from martial arts to cancel the force of the blow. The redhead is completely confused by the explanation and doesn't understand anything about the technique. Louis then tells her to just think of it as a technique and advances for the final attack. Surprised by his speed, the heiress barely has time to react to the boy's movement. With incredible speed, the protagonist runs towards the girl to end the fight. His feet move so fast that he seems to glide across the ground. The young man creates several images of himself, confusing the warrior with his movement. Faye then swings her spear in a wide arc to try to hit all the copies at once. But our protagonist dodges her attack with ease, creating more and more false images. Kane, who is watching, is shocked and wonders if it's an optical illusion. He then says the boy's movement is like a butterfly's and is impressed. The redhead shouts in frustration, because even with him right in front of her, she can't hit him. It is explained that this is an elegant technique from a legendary boxer called the butterfly step. With this light and difficult-to-rhythm movement, our hero can dodge anything. The boy says this technique is perfect for the situation and gets closer for the final attack. With a precise punch, Louis hits the girl dead on and sends her flying with the blow. The impact of the punch is so strong that the warrior is thrown with impressive force. Kane is completely speechless and says it's unbelievable that he defeated Faye. The director is also shocked by the result and says that it was quite unexpected. He comments that few can beat Faye without magic, and the commoner might be a combat genius. Our protagonist stands victorious while the girl is lying on the ground, defeated. But she gets up and says it's not over yet, introducing herself as Faye of the Durhan family. Louis just stares at his opponent with a calm expression, preparing to continue the fight. The young man thinks that because she is from a great family, she can't lose so easily. The redhead then advances with a powerful kick, and a red aura envelops her entire body. The protagonist realizes that she has abandoned the spear and will use martial arts based on it. With a shout, the Harris charges at the boy to hit him once and for all. Our hero then assumes a Wing Chun stance, preparing for the counter-attack. With the Paxo technique, the young man prepares to deflect the girl's attack with his hands. The warrior then shouts the name of her attack, crushing fist, and advances with a powerful punch. The two then clash in a final confrontation, and a great wave of energy spreads out. The protagonist feels the impact of the blow and compares it to the power of a 1-inch punch. He compliments her technique, and the redhead says her family isn't just about battle spears. With that, the girl shouts the name of her attack and launches several energy fists at once. Lewis smiles and accepts the challenge, preparing to use his boxing martial arts. Then the two clash once more. He thinks that fighting a strong opponent is the dream he always wanted. A strange energy consumes him, and his heart begins to pulse with a sinister red aura. With that, the protagonist's eye glows intensely, showing that he is losing control. A demonic shadow appears behind him as he shouts for them to enjoy the fight more. Seeing the sudden change, the red-haired warrior gets scared and asks what is happening. The girl sees a huge demonic face in front of her, feeling intimidated. Frightened, the Harris realizes that her body simply cannot move at all. Without mercy, the boy strikes his opponent's face, throwing her with force, sending the girl flying far away. Seeing the scene, the director is completely shocked and wonders what that was just now. The two are thrown far away by the force of the impact, surprising everyone watching. The girl then falls to the ground hard and ends up hitting a tree with the recoil of the blow. From afar, Kane and another student watch the scene, worried about the young warrior's condition. The two are shocked and can't believe that a mere commoner managed to corner the Harris. Kane's friend then feels a strange pressure and holds his head in pain and confusion. Suddenly, Brian starts to feel sick, and his friend worriedly asks what's wrong with him. The boy says he feels ill and becomes terrified as he realizes what might be happening. He then feels the protagonist's sinister energy and wonders if it is what he thinks it is. Kane is furious and says their plan failed because he never thought the commoner would be so strong. With his mouth bleeding, Brian remembers a legend and faces the situation with great fear. He then adds that if the legend is true, they cannot let the boy live. Faye gets up with difficulty and faces her opponent, shocked by the sudden change in power. Consumed by fury, the protagonist advances and lands a devastating blow on the girl with all his might. The attack hits her head on, and the force of the impact makes her spit some blood. With that, the Harris is thrown back and falls to the ground, completely defenseless against the attack. Our hero then lets out a roar of fury, showing that he has completely lost control of himself. He then unleashes a series of punches. The young woman says his power and speed are on another level, and that there's no way she can win. Desperate, the girl realizes that if this continues, she will surely be done for. With that, she decides to use her secret technique, and a magic circle appears on her fist. Then the girl uses her fire fist and collides with the boy's attack to defend herself. A huge explosion of red and yellow energy occurs from the clash of the two powers. The Harris screams in pain as she is caught in the explosion and is thrown far away with great force. With the impact, she flies through the forest, breaking several trees with her body at high speed. Our protagonist seems to be returning to normal. Suddenly, the boy comes to his senses and realizes that he has once again lost control of his body. He then looks at his hand and is shocked to realize that it was the power of magic. Kane runs to help him and asks if he is okay, but the young man is worried about the girl. Suddenly, an upperclassman appears and announces that the candidate lost his emblem during the fight. With a victorious smile, the man then says that the protagonist has been disqualified from the exam. Lewis looks at his chest and realizes that his admission emblem is catching fire out of nowhere. Then the small flame consumes the entire emblem, turning it to ashes in an instant. The upperclassman shouts that he lost, but Kane defends him, saying it was just an accident. But the man says the director saw everything and asks if Kane is going to help a cheating commoner. With that, the examiner grabs him and shouts that trash like him should disappear forever. Suddenly, a voice shouts for him to wait, and the red-haired girl appears, badly injured but standing. Kane and the upperclassmen are completely shocked to see that the young woman is still conscious. The protagonist is also surprised by the scene and stares at the girl, not knowing what to say. The Harrison approaches and asks if the boy is safe, leaving him very confused. The man is furious and asks if she wants to be disqualified for protecting a commoner. But the young woman shouts for him to shut up and says she knows his emblem was burned. Faye apologizes to Lewis and Kane is shocked by the scene, but the boy takes all the blame. She then says that he won and proposes a new fight when they both get into the academy. The examiner scoffs at the idea and asks how they will pass if he only has 4 emblems. The red-haired girl then tears a piece of her clothing with her emblems to give to the boy. She then extends her hand and tells him to take it, as that is the reward for defeating her. With this, the young man now has a total of 14 emblems and can pass the final exam. The warrior then reinforces that his emblem burned after the fight and that it counts. The upperclassman is furious with the girl's attitude and shouts her name with great anger, but the redhead ignores the man and gets Kane's attention, who is surprised by her attitude. She then says she won't accept the weak passing while those who deserve it are failed. At this, the young woman kicks the tip of her spear into the air with a quick and precise movement. She then asks what happens if the 10th place finisher has 14 or more emblems in total. Kane then gives a smile and says that by coincidence, he was thinking the same thing as her. The girl says he's not so dumb, and the two run off to collect more emblems together. The protagonist just watches the scene with a smile as the upperclassman walks away, very annoyed. Suddenly, the director appears and says that Lewis has been disqualified and will be escorted out. The upperclassman then glares at him and tells the boy not to think that this is all over. The noble says that if Faye defeats other candidates, Lewis will surely pass the exam. With a sinister look, the upperclassman says it wouldn't be strange if a candidate was taken out by accident. The other noble encourages him to do it and hopes the protagonist isn't like the other weaklings. A sinister entity then remembers the feeling from before and talks about Lewis's true identity. The director says that martial arts are strong, but alone, they can't match magic. Looking at the academy, the boy thinks he needs to learn to fuse magic and martial arts. Leaving the place, the boy worries about his torn clothes and how he will explain everything to his mother. He thinks that if he tells the truth, she will get very worried and ask a lot of questions. Suddenly, a cloaked figure appears behind him with a dagger ready for the final attack. But with a quick reflex, our protagonist manages to dodge the blow at the last second. With a powerful kick, Louis sends the attacker flying and prepares for the battle to come. The mysterious man recovers and asks in shock how the young man managed to notice his presence. The protagonist then says that the smell of blood he exudes was impossible not to notice. At this, 2 more men appear, and the leader mocks the boy for being so relaxed near his end. Seeing that he is surrounded, the young man realizes that his opponents are very skilled, and that he will have to fight seriously. He then notices that one of them seems much more dangerous than the others, and prepares for the worst. Suddenly, the group's leader advances with a spinning kick and shouts for the boy not to look away. With a malicious smile, the man says the protagonist's head will fly with his next blow. But our hero's eyes glow with a blue energy, and he activates his special ability. With that, he creates several images of himself and dodges the enemy's attack with ease. Using his dagger, the boy blocks the blow. With a quick and precise movement, the young man throws the attacker to the ground with impressive force. He then takes the chance and lands a powerful kick on the fallen enemy. The protagonist then dodges another attack, showing his agility and combat skill. The leader gets up and says the boy has superhuman perception and fighting techniques, just as the report said. Louis is surprised by the man's words and wonders what kind of report that was. The leader admits that his close combat is good but questions how he would deal with magic. With that, the other 3 men fire several magical wind arrows in our hero's direction. The young man prepares for the impact of the attacks, but seems surprised by their unexpected strength. He manages to dodge just barely, and the arrows stick into the trees behind him with a green glow. Seeing that he can't continue like this, the boy decides to use one of his breathing techniques. With this technique, he uses the chi in his body to increase his strength and unleashes hidden power. This explosively increases his strength and speed, preparing him for the final counterattack. Then, with his eyes glowing blue, the protagonist advances with impressive speed. The leader scoffs at his effort and orders his men to fire more wind arrows at him. As our boy charges at the guys, but one of the attackers is shocked by his speed and wonders where the boy went. Suddenly, our hero appears in the air, and with a precise kick, he disarms the group's leader. The man is completely shocked and tries to defend himself from the protagonist's surprise attack. With a scream of pain, the leader is thrown back by the force of our protagonist's blow. Meanwhile, the other 2 attackers continue to fire their magic arrows without stopping. The leader, fallen on the ground, shouts furiously for his companions to stop the boy at all costs. One of the men then advances with a kick to try to hit the young man up close in the fight, but our hero defends against the blow with his arm. The force of the attack is so great that the boy's hand trembles from the impact of the enemy's kick. With that, the protagonist is thrown back but manages to stay on his feet to continue the battle. The protagonist faces the enemy and thinks that this guy is really strong and dangerous. With his arms crossed, the man in blue seems very confident in his victory against the young boy. Suddenly, the other attackers move and surround our hero from all possible sides. Completely surrounded, the boy realizes he is in a very difficult situation in the battle. With that, several energy arrows are fired at once in our protagonist's direction. With nowhere to escape, the young man is hit head on and falls to the ground, apparently defeated. One of the men celebrates the victory and says they finally managed to take the boy down for good. He then wonders if the boy is really a commoner because he gave them much more trouble than expected. But suddenly our hero opens his eye. With a quick movement, he gets up and grabs the enemy's weapon. The young man then uses the opponent's strength against him and pushes him back with full force. With the leverage, he breaks the man's spine, who screams in pain from the boy's counterattack. Using the attacker as a shield, he defends against the arrows and throws him at the other attacker. With a wave of energy, the protagonist throws the remaining enemies far away with the impact. The man in blue then realizes that the boy was just pretending to be defeated in the fight. Louis gets up, panting but victorious, while the defeated enemy lies on the ground. With a clap, the man in blue praises the young man's skill, saying it was impressive. The boy asks if he doesn't care about his men, but he says he doesn't care about trash. Then our hero throws the weapon he picked up towards the last remaining enemy. The man in blue says the boy is smart. The man says that if it weren't for his orders, he would like to make the young man his disciple. He then advances with his weapon and says he really wished the boy could be his apprentice. With a dark energy, the weapon comes down with full force, but our hero manages to block the blow. The impact of the attack is so strong that it throws our boy into the forest. With that, the protagonist is sent flying, spitting blood from the force of the blow he received. The leader then watches the boy fall and prepares for the next attack without hesitation. With a giant hammer, he says the young man's skill is good, but not against a superior fighter. His eyes glow with a purple energy, and he says the boy is not even close to his level. Even at a disadvantage, our hero faces the attack with a look full of determination on his face. With that, the magic hammer hits the ground and causes a gigantic explosion at the battle site. The enemy then descends to finish the fight. Then the opponent uses a sequence of attacks. The dust slowly dissipates. The leader then looks down and stares at the crater, wondering about the boy's resilience. To his surprise, he sees the young man in the middle of the crater and wonders if he is still alive. Even injured, Louis gets up and says he won't be done for in that place, no way. The enemy says it's a shame, but our protagonist's life ends right there. He then prepares his strongest attack and says that not even a goddess can save him now. The young man then looks up, seeing the attack. With that, the man unleashes his heavenly hammer, and the attack comes down with full force to end the fight. With a desperate shout, the boy affirms that he absolutely cannot be taken out now. His desire is to master magic to be able to protect his family, which is so precious to him. With his eye glowing red, he decides that he will change his destiny, no matter the cost. Then a red energy explodes from his fist, and the young man shouts that he will survive no matter what. With that, the boy's red energy collides with the mysterious attacker's dark hammer. The attacker is completely shocked and wonders what that strange and powerful energy is. At this, a huge energy explosion occurs, destroying everything around the two fighters. The force of the explosion increases, and a giant fireball forms in the middle of the dark forest. After the dust settles, our protagonist falls to the ground, coughing and badly injured from the blow. The man in blue finds it strange as his hammer is smoking after the clash of powers. He then admits that for the first time, it seems like he is fighting an equal opponent. With that, the attacker finally understands why that person is after our hero. Full of rage, the man raises his hammer and shouts for the monster to finally be gone for good. But suddenly, a voice shouts that it's enough, and an energy tornado hits him head on with full force. With the force of the attack, the man in blue is thrown far away, his body spinning in the air. The tornado starts to follow the guy. Completely surprised, the attacker faces the energy and wonders what all that power is, hitting him head on. And the man screams in pain from the attack. Lying on the ground, our protagonist also observes the scene and wonders what is happening. Suddenly, a figure appears. Our protagonist recognizes the man and is shocked to see the Academy's director there. The Grandmaster praises him for having suppressed his fury and offers him a magic potion. With that, the boy takes the flask and drinks all the liquid at once to heal his wounds. Meanwhile, the blue attacker falls to the ground. Furious, the director asks who gave the order to attack one of his Academy's examinees. The man then calls him Grandmaster and tells him not to think he can protect the monster. Aronian glares at the attacker with a serious look, but the man just smiles sinisterly and says that this is all just the beginning of the plan. Suddenly, the attacker's body explodes, scattering blood all over the dark forest. The director wonders if it was self-inflicted and if the Assassin's Guild is behind all this. Lewis then gets up, impressed by the power of the advanced healing potion he drank. A green energy surrounds him, and he realizes that even his broken bones are now healed. The boy then asks if the director wasn't just passing by coincidence. With a serious look, the young man asks why the Grandmaster is always saving him from everything. Aronian then says he will discuss this matter at the protagonist's house, leaving him confused. Suddenly, the boy despairs as he realizes it's very late and his mother is worried. With that, he starts running at high speed, shouting that this is very bad for him. The director then calls for Kylie and summons a dark creature to take care of the cleanup. The creature flies to the crater as Aronian walks away from the battle site. In the town of Mantia, a man yells at the protagonist's mother in front of a windmill. The aggressor accuses her of mocking the Lord, and she says she was just waiting for the children to arrive. Then another man grabs her wrist with a sinister look, saying she needs a punishment. But before he can do anything, our protagonist appears and lands a punch right in his face. With a powerful kick, Lewis throws the man to the ground, who screams in pain from the impact of the blow. The boy's mother is shocked to see him and says he has finally come home after the exam. The woman is completely stunned by the scene and covers her mouth with her hands in disbelief. The young man then runs to help her and worriedly asks if she is okay with all that. She touches his face and notices that his clothes are torn and that he is all bruised. The boy calms her down and says he is fine and that he just got a little hurt during the academy exam. The aggressor gets up furiously and accuses the boy of always breaking the rules and starting fights. The man then threatens him, saying he will report him to the Lord and call a certain George. Suddenly, the director appears floating and says that it seems this is all a misunderstanding. Aronian then lands and introduces himself as the Academy's director, leaving everyone surprised. The aggressors are terrified because if he was flying, he is definitely a Grandmaster. With an intimidating look, the director tells them to give his regards to the Lord of the city. Frightened, the two bow and promise they will do exactly as the Grandmaster commanded. Aronian then turns to the boy's mother and says he has something to discuss with her. With that, the three enter the house, and the director invites them to sit and talk about the matter. Inside, the Grandmaster wonders if this is the windmill the nobles were talking about. With a keen eye, the director notices that the boy's inventions are everywhere. Meanwhile, in another place, Lewis is tinkering with one of his creations while the Grandmaster watches him intently. The young man's mother then arrives with apples and says her son made everything and that their lives have improved. Worried, she asks if the boy caused trouble, but Aronian says his results were incredible. The director thinks that he has only seen a talent like the young man's before in the scripture of Gaia. The story then goes back to a time when humanity was ruled by tyrannical monsters. But a genius created the arcane arts and along with his friends, saved humanity from extinction. The day of this saint's birth became Liberation Day, and everyone celebrated the victory. In the scripture of Gaia, this man is known to all as the legendary first hero. Back in the present, his mother calls him a savior, but Lewis remembers there are no heroes in the legends. Aronian then says with a serious look that the hero appears in a very different way in the stories. He was a man with black hair and black eyes, leaving the protagonist and his mother shocked. The director reveals that this is a great secret known only to the elite of humanity. Despite saving everyone, a madness lived in the hero's heart that just wanted to destroy everything. The hero took down his own allies, and that became humanity's first nightmare. This inner madness is like a curse that consumes the soul of its possessor from within. Lewis is shocked by the revelation and wonders if his own madness came from that time. Aronian explains that this is why, in all countries, people with black hair and eyes are eliminated. The director then touches Lewis's head and asks if he thought he could fool everyone with just dye. His mother despairs and says it was she who told the boy to dye his hair black. Our protagonist then comforts her and tells her to calm down because everything is okay now. With a confident look, the young man says that if the director wanted to get rid of him, he would have done so already. Aronian smiles and says that he resisted the madness, and because of that, he saw in him the qualities of a new hero. The mother and son are shocked by the revelation, and she asks if he really said a new hero. The director then takes an apple and says the world seems peaceful, but that's not quite the case. Holding the fruit, he explains that a great darkness lurks, and that seeing the boy made him think. Aronian then holds the apple against the moon and says the legends everyone knows are absurd. With a serious look, the Grand Master says he wants to guide the young man towards the future of humanity. Suddenly, the director throws the apple with impressive speed towards our hero, but the boy manages to catch the fruit with a quick reflex, showing his incredible skill. The Grand Master then reveals that thanks to Faye and Cain, our protagonist passed the final exam. With that, he offers the young man the chance to receive his personal instruction at the Candria Academy. Lewis then asks with a smile if the director is betting on him even if he goes mad. The director stares at him with a serious look, and his eyes glow with a purple and sinister energy. Suddenly, the apple in the boy's hand is cut in half, leaving the young man very surprised. Aronian then says with a serious look that if that happens, he will get rid of the boy himself. The next day, a friend of the boy is shocked to learn that he received a personal invitation, but our protagonist worries about the academy's costs and the dormitory fees. The young man then wonders what his true connection is with the legendary first hero. The boy recalls the director asking if he thought he could fool everyone with just the die. He then remembers the Grandmaster's threat and wonders how much he can trust his words. The young man questions why his mother heard everything, and Aronian says she would be a burden if she didn't know. Angrily, the boy shouts that his mother is not a burden to anyone and glares at him with a furious look. The director explains that if his identity is exposed, his family will also be in great danger. Aronian then flies away and tells the young man to get stronger because the real tests have only just begun. With a determined look, the protagonist agrees that he needs to get much stronger no matter what. Suddenly, the orphanage children run towards him, shouting his name with great joy. A little girl named Lana jumps into his arms, and the boy hugs her with a smile on his face. The little girl cries and asks if he will come back because she doesn't want to say goodbye to him forever. No way. The boy comforts her and says he will come back during the holidays because that is his real home, after all. The girl makes him pinky promise, and the young man tells her not to worry because he will keep his promise. One of the boys then announces that a noble's butler is calling him for an important conversation. The butler approaches a carriage and confirms our protagonist's identity. He introduces himself as the butler of the Aranka family, hands over an invitation from the young Master Kane. The boy opens the invitation and wonders if the noble wants to deepen their friendship before classes start. With that, he accepts the invitation, and the butler guides him towards the luxurious carriage that awaits him. The scene then changes to the city of Harzin, located in the northern Kandria Empire. The butler explains that the Aranka family is very important, that the city has prospered because of them. Arriving there, the young man is completely shocked by the size of that great noble family's mansion. Kane then appears running and calls for our protagonist with a big smile on his face. He hugs him and says he heard the boy caused a big scene in the academy's final exam. The noble says he only passed because of him and Faye, and that he will forget the bet they made. But the hare says they didn't fight in the exam, and that he wants a training session before classes begin. Our hero then realizes that he just wants to know more about the academy and the magic he uses. Suddenly, a female voice comes from the top of the stairs, asking what all the commotion is about. It was a noble woman in a purple dress, who stares at them with a very serious and cold expression. The young blonde then tries to introduce the boy as his friend to the woman who appeared, but she shouts for him to be silent with an expression of pure rage on her noble face. With that, the heir of the Aranka family is completely shocked and very afraid of the woman. She then scolds him and asks since when can just anyone enter the family's mansion. The woman says that a man like that is not worthy of being her son's friend and that he is trash. She then tells Kane to train as his father commanded and become a great sage in the future. The noblewoman turns to the protagonist and asks what his purpose is in getting close to her son. She then offers a gold ring and says that with it, he can live his entire life in peace. With contempt, the woman throws the ring on the floor right in front of our protagonist. Furious, the noblewoman then shouts for the boy to take the ring and leave the mansion forever. Full of rage, the hare shouts at his mother and asks why she is doing all this. With a look of shame, the blonde noble then turns and apologizes to his new friend. The boy kneels and says he became Kane's friend because he recognized his great skill in fighting. The boy then asks if Kane's word is worth as little as that gold ring. Kane is completely shocked and speechless at his friend's courage in facing his mother. With a furious look, the noblewoman shouts for someone to appear and resolve this situation at once. With that, several guards appear, and the woman orders them to throw the commoner out of the mansion. Kane then stands in front of him and says the boy has more talent than he does and that he defeated Faye. The noblewoman scoffs at the idea of a commoner surpassing the children of the great noble families of the empire. Lewis then says with a serious look that if he is around, Kane can become even stronger. Full of rage, the woman shouts that the boy is mocking the Aranka family and calls him arrogant. When an absurd pressure rises in the room, sending people flying, suddenly a man appears at the door and stops all the commotion just with his presence. The man then repeats Lewis's words and asks if it's true that Kane can become stronger. Our protagonist and the young blonde are shocked to see the master of the Aranka family there. The man approaches and the woman calls him master with a very worried expression on her face. The noblewoman then calls her husband by the name of William with an expression of total desperation. She says that if she leaves Kane with that commoner, he will never be able to reach her husband's level. But the man simply ignores her. The man then calls for his son, and the noble bows in respect in front of his powerful father. Lewis then introduces himself as Kane's friend and realizes that the man's aura is incredible. The master then asks his son if the boy's words about his power are true. With a serious look, the man approaches and tells the young man to prove his words at that moment. The family's master then unleashes a powerful aura in the form of a tiger to test the boy. With that, our protagonist feels the intense pressure and the intent to end things coming from the man. The red aura charges at the young boy. Being hit, he thinks he can't breathe with all that pressure on his body. But even feeling that force, the boy faces the noble with a very determined look. He then prepares for the battle and realizes the man is being very serious with him. The young man understands that the master of the Aranka family really intends to finish him right there. With a sinister look, the older noble continues to release his energy without any mercy. The pressure is so great that the boy feels as if his soul is being torn from his body. He is impressed by the Grandmaster's willpower and finds it terrifying. But the young man says that, as expected of a Grandmaster, that power was truly incredible. Our hero reveals that because he has hunted monsters, he has built up resistance to this kind of intent. With that, an orange energy begins to explode from his body. The master is completely shocked by the power the boy is releasing. William is completely stunned and can't believe what he is seeing at that moment. Then our protagonist's aura takes the form of a fire dragon to face the tiger. With a determined look, the boy faces the master of the Aranka family as an equal in the fight. The two auras then clash in a battle of power between the tiger and the fire dragon. Kane is shocked by what he sees. Lewis then falls to his knees on the floor. Kane rushes to help his friend and asks if he is okay, and the boy confirms that he is. William then calls the boy by name and asks why he seeks so much power. With a determined look, the young man replies that it is to protect his family from any danger. The master of the Aranka family is silent for a moment, seeming to reflect on the answer. He then turns to his son and says his willpower is weak and to learn from the commoner. Kane's mother is completely shocked and asks her husband what he is thinking. But the man glares at her with a cold look and asks if she has any opinion on the matter. Frightened, the noblewoman falls silent while her son just watches the scene, very embarrassed. Kane then calls Lewis to the training ground so they can start fighting. Arriving there, the hare apologizes on behalf of his parents for what happened earlier. But the protagonist says it's okay and that his father was a bit too extreme. The young blonde explains that his father is fair and that Lewis is more suitable to be the hare. With a smile, the boy understands that the master only tested his ability for his son's sake. Kane then gets confused by the word love and seems not to understand what his friend means. The hare then remembers that since he was little, he barely left the house and only trained all the time. His only childhood memories are of eating, sleeping, and training to become stronger and stronger. His father's wish was for him to become a great sage like his grandfather was in the past. Without understanding why, he kept swinging his sword just to have his father's recognition. To the young noble, that house was like a prison, and he even needed permission to breathe. Despite the praises, his status and talent were like chains that bound him ever tighter. The hare explains that the more they confine him, the more he desires to know the world outside. His biggest dream is to be able to sing freely like a bard and be the master of his own life. He wants to be like a bird flying across the entire continent without any worries. But the boy says that unfortunately, this is a world where only strength truly matters. With a serious look, our protagonist just listens to his new noble friend's venting. Kane then explains that it's not that he wants to be strong, but swinging his sword is his only way. For the hare, that is the only way to break the chains that bind him. He reveals that his father graduated from the academy, so he will go there and get stronger too. The young blonde shouts that all he wants is permission to live his life freely. With a determined smile, the noble tells Lewis that he is counting on his help for that. Our protagonist accepts the challenge and prepares for training with his new friend. With that, the two finally begin to train together on the Aranka family's battlefield. From a distance, the family's master asks his servant about the investigation's results. The man says the boy is not ordinary and that he used combat techniques no one has ever seen. Furthermore, he not only broke records but also defeated Faye even when she used magic. The servant adds that he is protected by Aronian, who fought assassins to save him. With a serious look, William says the boy seems to be a big troublemaker. The servant then asks why he allowed contact between a guy like that and the young master. The older noble explains that people like that attract danger and that overcoming challenges makes people grow. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Lewis dodges a kick from Kane, showing his superiority. William then thinks that maybe that boy can really make his son stronger. With that, the hare shouts for the boy to receive his technique and unleashes a powerful wind attack. Our protagonist then smiles and tells him to bring it on because he is ready for the fight. The family's master admits that it seems his son has a better eye for people than he does. The noble then uses his arcane technique called Wind Rush and charges forward with all his might. With his eyes glowing blue, the boy analyzes Kane's attack to predict his movements. Kane is completely shocked to see his opponent's fist. With a quick movement, the young man manages to block the noble's sword using his own hand. He then says that accelerating with magic is good, but Kane's movements are too linear. Kane then smiles and says he now understands why not even Faye could beat him in the exam. Our hero asks if there is something on his face because Kane is staring at him in a very strange way. The hare then asks if he has ever felt anything different about his own fighting style. He is confused because his techniques are secret arts that his father and grandfather mastered to become strong. Our protagonist then says that what he means is that there is another path for the noble. The young blonde is shocked by the idea of a path different from his father's and grandfather's. With that, the boy picks up one of the swords from the weapon arsenal to show what he means. He then calls for Kane and asks if the young noble doesn't want to surprise his own father. From afar, the master of the Aranka family watches the scene, very curious about what will happen. The older noble continues to watch the two boys with a very attentive and thoughtful look. With that, the two young men jump into the air and begin a new training session, to William's surprise. Our hero explains that in martial arts, speed is an absolute and powerful weapon. He continues, saying that speed isn't just about moving fast but also about reacting and deciding fast. Kane has an impressive natural speed that complements his supportive wind magic. Lewis says that piercing techniques are difficult, and his grandfather having mastered them means nothing. He suggests that his father stopped at the Grandmaster level precisely because of this difficulty. To maximize his talent, the boy says he needs to switch to a specialized combat style. With a confident smile, the young man asks if the noble is prepared for this style change. Kane tells him not to compare him with other nobles, and that he will do anything to be free at last. Lewis praises the response and says the key to fighting is to keep moving and retreat when necessary. With a determined look, the duo prepares to show William their new skill. Using his wind magic, Kane shouts to accelerate, and the two advance with all their might for the attack. The two move at high speed, leaving the master and his servant impressed with the scene. The servant then shouts worriedly for the master, who watches everything with a very calm expression. With that, the two young men attack the master of the Aranka family with their daggers drawn. Master William remains still as the two boys move at high speed around him. Lewis explains that daggers are the fastest and most maneuverable weapons that exist in combat. The goal is to push their advantages to the absolute limit to overcome any opponent. With that, he combines the daggers with his butterfly step technique for a perfect attack. William is completely shocked and surprised by the new skill demonstrated by the two. Our protagonist tries to attack the noble from all sides. Kane also uses his wind magic and creates several clones of himself for the attack. With that, the duo attacks the master from all sides in an impressive aerial assault. The hare then realizes that his body and dagger feel lighter than ever before. With this new sensation, the young noble feels like a bird flying freely through the sky. He loves the fusion of daggers with his combat techniques and the wind magic he uses. Gripping the dagger firmly, the boy prepares for the next move in the fight. Seeing his son's new skill, the master of the Aranka family is surprised by the scene. William faces the situation with a shocked look and can't believe what he is seeing. Kane then shouts to his father that this is his true path in martial arts. The master just lets out a grunt and a dark energy begins to emanate from his body. He then unleashes a powerful shockwave that sends the two young men flying with force. Full of rage, William asks if his son abandoned the clan's techniques to prove something. The two boys are thrown back but manage to recover in mid-air to counterattack. Our protagonist then shouts for Kane to accelerate, and the two join hands for the strike. With that, Kane uses his wind magic and speeds them both up with Lewis on his back in the air. The duo then advances once more. The two continue the attack and surround the master with a tornado of green energy slashes. The master turns quickly, but William stops the attack with one hand and asks with disdain if that's all they have. He reaches out to grab Kane's dagger. The heir then advances with his new speed. With a furious look, the noble faces his own son's attack with contempt. William then shouts that his son is a coward for using this new fighting style. Then Kane remembers that retreating is not weakness and that a pulled back fist prepares the blow. With that, the blonde noble understands that the retreat connects to the next attack he will use. The heir then uses his wind magic and creates a tornado to attack his father with full force. The duo advances at high speed with their daggers drawn to show their new skill. The master of the Aranka family is surprised to see the two young boys' new technique. With a battle cry, the two jump into the air to attack the grandmaster with a combined strike. Lewis then explains that there is a baseball technique called a changeup, and Kane is confused. With a confident smile, the boy prepares to teach the new move. The protagonist then shouts for Kane to receive his attack so that he can understand the technique. The heir prepares and manages to block his friend's blow with a very quick movement. With that, the two begin to train the new technique to improve their combat skills. Lewis explains that it's a technique to deceive opponents by using variations in speed. He adds that casual movements become feints if used to delay a reaction. With this, they can overwhelm the enemy, maximizing the dagger's force with speed. The family master is completely confused by the duo's fast and unpredictable movements. Kane then advances and uses the new technique to attack his father, who is surprised by the blow. But William says that such a slow attack has no meaning and stares at him with contempt. But the heir's attack is actually a feint to deceive the master of the Aranka family. With a surprised look, the older noble finally realizes the true intention of the strike. The attack then passes by him without causing any damage while the young blonde remains in the air. William faces his son and seems impressed with the new skill he demonstrated. With a confident smile, the duo prepares to finally initiate the real combined attack. With that, the two boys advance together and attack the master from all sides with their daggers. But William shouts that's enough and stops the two young men's training with a firm command. The duo then stops the attack. The noble then calls for Kane. The heir of the Aranka family is nervous, waiting for his father's judgment. William then tells his son not to shame the family's name in a very serious tone. Kane smiles and replies, "Wes," showing his determination to follow the new path he has chosen. The servant approaches and calls for the master, who watches the scene with a thoughtful and calm look. The older noble reflects on the attack tactics and the feints with speed variation. With an energy dagger in his hand, the master finds the new possibility of retreating interesting. William then thinks to himself that he has just learned a lesson from two children. Our protagonist says it was a good fight, but that unfortunately, the training is already over. Kane hugs his friend and says he was acknowledged for the first time and will give him a gift. With that, they arrive at the family's library, and the protagonist is shocked by its size. The boy is amazed by the number of books and can't believe what he is seeing. Kane then says that this is his thanks because without him, he wouldn't have found his path. The protagonist is surprised by the unexpected gesture of the noble heir of the Aranka family. The boy is astonished to see that the box contains a rare book and a bag with a lot of money. The noble explains that the books are about magic and will greatly help his studies at the academy. Lewis discovers that all students must undergo a mandatory magical awakening ritual. Curious, the young man asks what this ritual is, and Kane points to one of the books he received. He explains that the ritual is performed at the statue of Gaia and costs 10 gold coins to be done. Our hero despairs because the orphanage needs this money to survive for years. But the noble calms him down and says that at the academy, everything is free for students who pass the exam. With a smile, Kane asks if, with this, the bet they made is finally paid. The boy accepts the deal and thinks he needs to find a way to earn money as quickly as possible. Then he gets the idea to use the knowledge from his past life to invent new things. With that, he asks if the Aranka family has connections with merchant guilds to help him. The protagonist just says that it's a secret and that his friend will find out everything soon. A week later at the Kandria Academy, the entrance ceremony for the new students of the Empire begins. With a confident air, the white-haired boy walks excitedly to his first day of school. Suddenly, he smells something strange and notices someone approaching from behind him in the courtyard. The other student thinks the smell is of an expensive perfume and that the boy is from a rich family. A girl then hugs him and offers to show the newcomer the entire academy. The young man accepts the help and introduces himself as Lewis Carroll to his new classmate. With a smile, the girl says his name is strange and asks if he is an illegitimate son. She then explains that in the last 2 years, the emperor has grown old, and the situation has changed. Because of this, the imperial heirs fight with the nobles and great families at the academy. Rose reveals that although it seems peaceful because of the director, the reality is something else. Behind the scenes, there is a fight for resources, and those who don't earn credits are expelled from the academy. With that, the girl gets closer and touches our protagonist's chin provocatively. She warns him that he is being watched and that he better do his best in classes. The young woman then gets even closer and asks which family his family supports in the dispute. Suddenly, a boy separates them and recognizes Louis as the commoner who broke the exam record. With a smile, the young man extends his hand and introduces himself to our protagonist as Brian. Rose is shocked because she was sure she smelled an expensive perfume coming from the boy. Annoyed, she says it was a waste of time and leaves, leaving the two boys behind. The protagonist then greets Brian back with a confident smile on his face. The blonde-haired boy then tells our hero not to worry about the girl's attitude. Brian explains that the academy is a small version of the Empire and that it can be difficult for commoners. Suddenly, Kane appears running towards them, shouting our protagonist's name. Brian then says goodbye and says he will talk to other students but to call him if needed. The boy then turns and walks away with a very serious expression on his face. Kane approaches and asks what he was talking about with that Brian guy. The noble then reveals that Brian is the Chancellor's son, but they are not close at all. Our protagonist then comments that despite everything, Brian seems to be a pretty decent guy. Suddenly, Faye and Milena appear, and the young man says he doesn't like guys with weak will. The redhead greets him and says that if he is as strong as he says, she might acknowledge him. The boy thanks her for the help in the exam, and the warrior says he passed because of his own strength. With a punch in the air, the Harris says that next time, she will definitely win their fight. The girl then shouts not to be ignored and that if he wants attention, he'd better beat her first. With that, Miliana pulls her away and says they need to finish their registration as quickly as possible. Kane then hands a bag of coins to Louis, leaving him completely shocked by the scene. The hare explains that he followed the instructions and opened a trading company and burn a village. Louis then reveals that his secret was a new type of perfume with a more subtle scent. The noble admits the scent is good, and our hero says he will see when it starts selling. With the money, Kane says he will give some to his mother, and Louis praises him for his ideas. The hare then asks to keep it a secret, and our protagonist agrees to the plan. A man then hands the Academy's credit card to the young man and wishes him good luck. Suddenly, a group of nobles accuses him of having passed thanks to Kane and Faye at the Academy. The hare reveals that Sheath was expelled for hiring assassins to take him out. With a serious look, the protagonist thinks that he has finally discovered who is behind everything. Kane warns him that Sheath has an older brother, and that it's better for him to stay close for protection. From afar, Sheath's brother glares at the duo with a look of pure hatred and resentment on his face. With a malicious smile, the noble says the fun is just beginning for the two of them. In the Academy's Great Hall, the director welcomes all the new students of that year. Aronian congratulates them for having overcome all difficulties and successfully reaching this point. He then says that this is just the beginning and that he hopes they all become pillars of the Empire. With that, the director announces the speech from the freshman representative, the first place winner, Neil Gunn. To everyone's surprise, the boy gets on stage without clothes and carrying a giant axe. The other students are shocked by the scene and wonder what that kimono is thinking. Even Director Aronian is completely annoyed by the boy's attitude on stage. With a shout, Neil tells all the idiots to shut up and pay attention to his speech. He then reveals that his only goal is to defeat each one of them until they all wet their pants in fear. The nobles are furious with the declaration and call him a savage brute with no education. But the redhead shouts for them to shut up and calls them weaklings who only know how to talk trash. The director is disheartened and says his stomach hurts just thinking about having to teach that boy. Suddenly, Neil points his weapon and says his main target is in the middle of all of them. With that, he throws his giant axe with all his might towards the crowd of students. The weapon hits the floor with a devastating impact, opens a huge crater in the hall's floor. The axe then stops embedded in the floor, right in front of one of the students, to everyone's shock. To no one's surprise, the target of the attack was our protagonist, who watches the scene very seriously. The redhead then shouts Louis Carril's name and challenges him to a fight right there at the ceremony. With an impressive leap, Neil lands on top of his weapon and faces our hero from above. With a malicious smile, he shouts that the two of them will fight to see who is the true strongest. With a determined look, our protagonist faces the challenge without showing any fear. The redhead then shouts for them to fight to finally decide who is the true strongest. Suddenly, Kane steps in front and shouts for the boy to stop because the ceremony is not over yet. Neil then mocks the hero and asks if he isn't afraid to really fight against him. With that, the blonde noble becomes completely furious with the first place winner's provocation. Annoyed, Kane thinks that everyone is the same and underestimates him just because of his noble appearance. Full of rage, the hare advances with a punch towards the redhead to end the fight for good. But to everyone's surprise, Louis grabs his friend's fist with his hand and stops the attack. With a calm look, the white-haired boy just tells the noble to calm down a bit. The redhead then smiles and says he can fight both of them at once and calls them cowards. Suddenly, Brian appears and tells them to get along, because they are the only talented commoners. He then warns that if they continue with this selfish attitude, they won't last long. But the first place winner ignores him and tells him to disappear because he has no interest in fighting the weak. Brian is completely shocked by the boy's audacity while Kane smiles at the situation. The other students are furious and say that commoners have no education or manners. Kane then mocks Brian and says he embarrassed himself by meddling in their fight. With a malicious smile, Neil accepts the challenge and says he will finish Brian first. Suddenly, a teacher appears and reminds him that fights between students are forbidden at the academy. He explains that fights are only allowed in test classes or tournaments with a teacher present. With a serious look, the man asks if he understood and says that whoever breaks the rule is expelled. The redhead then laughs and says that being expelled from the academy would be a big problem. With that, he picks up his axe and says their fight will have to wait for later. But before leaving, the boy faces our hero and tells him to wait for him with a serious look. Louis just stares back at the first place winner. The teacher then ends the ceremony and informs everyone that classes start the next day. The protagonist wonders why he was challenged, and Kane says it's the brainless girl's fault. Annoyed, Faye punches Kane and calls him an idiot for almost getting expelled from the academy. But our hero takes the blame and says he fought against Neil during the academy's final exam. She explains that the fight ended in a draw, but Neil heard that Louis beat her and wants to fight him. The boy says it's a good thing it didn't turn into a fight, and that he would feel bad if she were expelled. With the confusion resolved, the young man calls his new friends to leave that place. As the trio walks away, the protagonist realizes that they are already hated by all the other students. With that, they arrive at the academy's store to buy the necessary supplies for classes. Inside, Louis is startled by the high prices, but the saleswoman says it's no big deal. She then shows a fluffy pillow for 30 silver coins and says it's a bargain. Next, the woman offers a magical herb pillow for 5 gold coins. Kane says that's cheap, and the protagonist realizes how important money and credits are. With that, the boy decides to take the cheapest beginner's kit for 100 silver coins. He thinks it's a good thing he earned money with the perfume, and will send the rest to the orphanage. The young man then realizes he needs magic potions for training and more ways to earn money. The girls then say goodbye and mention that the boy's magical awakening ritual is the next day. Watching them leave, the young man realizes he needs to work hard to earn more money. The scene then changes to the student dormitory, which seems to be a very luxurious and large place. With his supplies, the protagonist looks for room 60 and hopes he doesn't have a bad roommate. Suddenly, he hears a commotion and ends up dropping his things on the hallway floor. While picking up his things, the boy hears someone shouting not to mess with them inside. A group of nobles then surrounds a boy and threatens him, telling him to do as they say. But the purple-haired young man just stares at the aggressors with a calm and fearless look. Annoyed, the group's leader prepares to attack the boy and calls him a scoundrel in anger. He then grabs him by the tie and asks if the young man is looking for a fight. Suddenly, our protagonist touches the aggressor's arm with his finger and releases an orange energy. With that, the noble screams in pain as he feels his arm being covered by the mysterious energy. Lewis then reminds him that duels are forbidden and asks if he is okay with being expelled. The noble's friends panic and say they haven't done anything wrong yet. But the aggressor accuses the boy of attacking first and that it was self-defense. With his hand full of energy, the noble tries to attack our hero, who dodges with ease. The punch then hits one of the aggressor's friends right in the face, who was right behind him. With the impact, the boy flies away, leaving his companions completely shocked. Louis then turns with a smile and asks when he ever hit anyone there. The noble on the floor asks why he was attacked and says he doesn't understand anything. With a quick kick, our protagonist uses the energy to make the aggressor attack his own friend. The blow hits the other noble right in the stomach, who screams in pain from the unexpected impact. With that, the boy falls to the floor, and the group's leader is left confused about what is happening. The red energy then passes to another noble, who prepares to attack his companions. The boy is completely terrified as he realizes he can no longer control his body. Louis then uses his technique to make the noble trip and knock down all the other aggressors. With that, they all fall to the ground like a real domino effect of students. One of the nobles who was hit furiously asks why he was attacked, and the other denies everything. Desperate, the aggressor points at our hero and says that it's all the commoner's fault. With a smile, the young man tells them not to blame others just because their bodies feel strange. The group's leader then accuses the boy of controlling his body and calls him a monster. With a sinister look, the protagonist repeats the word monster and glares at the noble with contempt. Frightened, the aggressor asks what he is going to do, and the boy approaches menacingly. Suddenly, the purple-haired boy touches Louis's shoulder to try to calm the situation. Our protagonist then faces the boy, who seems to be asking him to let it go. With that, Louis turns to the nobles and asks if they want to go see the director to complain. Terrified, the aggressors shout that he is not normal and flee, promising that he will pay. The purple-haired boy then introduces himself as our protagonist's new roommate. Louis just stares at his new roommate, who seems very shy and introverted about the situation. On his pillow, the young man can see the name of his new roommate, Cara Candace. The protagonist then calls for his new roommate, who simply walks away without saying anything. With that, the young man is left standing alone in the room with the mess from the fight still on the floor. With a smile, he thinks that he was ignored and that his roommate seems to be the type who gets bullied. While tidying up the room, he reflects on the hectic first day and hopes the ritual will be peaceful. The scene then changes to night in a temple where two people are in a very dark place. Two figures observe a magic circle on the floor of the place. The next day, all the students gather in the Academy's grand temple for the magic ritual. Our protagonist then looks at the statue and wonders if that is the goddess of this world. A teacher then introduces the statue as that of the great creator of everything, the goddess Gaia. It is explained that a long time ago, the goddess Gaia created a world where humans and monsters coexisted. But over time, the monsters began to use their natural power to dominate all races. With that, dragons ruled the skies while giants dominated all the land of the world. The seas were controlled by krakens, and the power struggle between them bathed the world in red. Because of this, countless humans were lost during that entire period of chaos. The goddess then became furious and decided to bless the humans who had no magical power. Thus, humanity created arcane martial arts and became the new rulers of the world. The teacher then says that now they will receive the blessing and awaken the magic in their bodies. Louis is frustrated because once again, there was no mention of the legendary first hero. Kara, who is beside him, notices the expression of discontent on his roommate's face. Suddenly, the teacher calls the attention of the two boys, who are surprised by the situation. The teacher then points to the side and tells the two boys to follow him for the ritual. He leads them to two platforms and says that if they have talent, they will feel the elements. But with a serious look, the man warns that if they don't feel anything, they are complete trash. Our protagonist glares at the teacher with a cold look, unfazed by the threat. The man continues, saying that the academy doesn't need untalented students like them. With that, the teacher announces that the ritual will begin and tells everyone to sit on the floor. The boy then wonders if that teacher hates him for some unknown reason. It is explained that the four elements, earth, fire, wind, and water, are the foundation of that world. The teacher then tells them to sharpen their minds under the goddess's blessing to feel the elements. With a magic circle in his hands, the man begins to pray to the goddess in the sky. He then asks for the goddess to bless all the students present in the temple. Suddenly, a fire energy appears at the ritual site, to the surprise of all the students. Next, a water energy also appears, glowing with a very intense blue light in the air. With that, a beam of light hits the goddess's statue, which begins to shine brightly on the altar. The statue's eyes then glow with a golden and powerful energy for all to see. The entire statue is covered in a golden light and a magic circle appears on the temple floor. Suddenly, one of the nobles who provoked Louis before is hit by a ray of golden energy. Then an image of the goddess appears in the starry sky with a golden and very bright aura. The other students are amazed by the beauty of the elements floating all around in the air. One of the boys celebrates that fire chose him, while another gets the water element. Suddenly, a huge fire and earth energy explodes around Neil, to everyone's surprise. One of the nobles shouts in shock that the commoner managed to awaken two attributes at once. Another then wonders if the raid head is a genius because he controls magic with great ease. Neil then lets out a malicious laugh and shouts, this is the power he always dreamed of having. The energy expands throughout the temple, showing the incredible control he has over the elements. With a battle cry, the boy says the elements will have to obey him no matter what. He then turns and faces our protagonist and his roommate, who have not awakened anything yet. The redhead says that someone who doesn't awaken cannot be his rival, and tells Lewis not to disappoint him. One of the nobles then notices that no element is gathering around our hero. Meanwhile, the young man is surrounded by a dark aura and wonders why he feels nothing. The boy questions if it doesn't originally belong to that fantasy world. But he remembers feeling a strange power when he fought Cain at the Aranca mansion. Now the protagonist feels his mind being suffocated by something strange and dark. A dark energy surrounds him, and he feels as if he is being pulled into the darkness. With clenched teeth, the young man tells himself that his will is not that weak. Remembering his past life, the boy shouts that he won't be broken so easily again. With that, he releases an explosion of blue energy that pushes the darkness away from his body. The shockwave expands throughout the temple with impressive force and power. A huge beam of golden light then shoots up to the heavens, surprising all the other students. The young man then opens his eyes and is shocked to see that they are filled with colorful lights. The protagonist then wonders if the 4 colorful lights he sees are the elements. The teacher is completely shocked because he used a magic circle to isolate his mind. With a surprised look, the young man reaches out his hand to a sphere of blue energy. But the sphere of light suddenly moves away, leaving the boy a bit confused by the situation. He then wonders why he can feel the elements but can't touch them in the air. With that, the boy tries to grab the spheres, but they keep dodging his hands in the air. Lewis gets very annoyed with the situation and says that it's a real pain to deal with. The teacher then smiles and says he is mistaken if he thinks he will awaken just by escaping. It is then revealed to be a confinement magic circle that blocks the flow between spirit and element. In addition, a magic orb weakens the link between people and the elements they use. With that, the teacher warns that he has enemies determined to crush him at all costs. The man then tells the boy to sit and wait in despair until the end of that magic ritual. The scene then changes to night, and the other students begin to leave the Academy's temple. The nobles mock the two and say that the only one who matters is Neil, the first-place winner of the exam. Our protagonist remains with his eyes closed, with a very serious expression on his face. Beside him, Kara also seems very focused and faces the situation with great seriousness. Suddenly, Kara points to the floor and asks what's wrong with the temple floor. With a slight smile, the purple-haired boy simply reveals that it is a trap. Our hero then understands the situation and is completely furious with that revelation. The young man then gets up and assumes a fighting stance on top of the confinement circle. With a powerful punch, he hits the floor with all his might to break the magic circle. But the boy is completely shocked to see what happens next with the trap. Even with the floor broken, the confinement circle remains intact and glowing on the ground. Kara then shouts for him to hurry and points to the item that is causing all of this. With a smile, our protagonist thanks his new roommate for his help in the ritual. The young man then wonders why something like this would be there, and if it was just a coincidence. But with a serious look, he realizes that it was definitely not a simple accident. From a distance, the teacher observes the scene and seems very annoyed with what just happened. Without caring about the teacher, the boy says that now the real part of the ritual will begin. With that, a blue aura surrounds him, and he concentrates to finally awaken his magical power. Suddenly, all the elements begin to fly at high speed towards our hero. With that, the lights create a vortex of energy around him with impressive power. The other students are shocked and say that the vortex is just like the first-place winners. At the center of it all, our protagonist is surrounded by a very powerful elemental energy. The teacher is furious and wonders how the boy managed to awaken even with the trap. Suddenly, a hand touches his shoulder and stops from doing anything else foolish. The man then calls him director, who tells the teacher to calm down and not do anything else. Frightened, the teacher bows in respect and agrees to stop his evil plan for good. The other students wonder why the director is there, and if there is a secret between him and Lewis. Furious, the teacher thinks that his plan was almost exposed and that the director appeared at the worst possible time. The scene then shifts to the teacher walking alone down a very empty hallway. He then approaches a man who is sitting calmly by a fountain in the courtyard. The teacher says his plan failed, and the other man tells him to stay out of trouble. With a look of contempt, he says our protagonist was lucky to have escaped the trap. Meanwhile, the director tells Kylie to keep an eye on Sid's movements for now. With a serious look, the Grandmaster says he has already removed all obstacles from his path. Aronian then says that now everything depends on the boy and watches him from a distance with attention. With that, our protagonist is surrounded by a very colorful and powerful elemental aura. Floating in the air, the young man thinks he finally understands what Cain was talking about regarding the elements. The scene then goes back to the library where Cain explains that the elements are the basis of everything. The boy then wonders why monsters use magic from birth and humans don't. As he reflects on this, his noble friend remains by his side, waiting patiently. Then the hare reveals that inside monsters, there are magic crystals that give them power. These crystals contain various elemental powers, which is why monsters have a high affinity for them. Because of this, the creatures can use magic through their magic crystals from birth. Humans, on the other hand, need to go through an awakening ritual and be recognized by the elements. During the ritual, elements with good compatibility approach the person for the awakening. With this, the young man wonders if magic crystals are the elements themselves. But the noble denies it and says that actually, everything in that world is made of natural elements. Back in the present, a sphere of water floats near him, and the boy wonders if he has an affinity. The boy then touches the water sphere, and a strange vision begins to take over his mind. Suddenly, he sees 2 beautiful mermaids swimming in a blue ocean full of magical energy. But the vision changes, and a giant monster with tentacles and red eyes emerges from the depths. With that, the young man is startled by the vision and realizes something is very wrong with the ritual. He then screams in pain as a sinister red energy consumes his entire body. The power is so great that he kneels and is surrounded by a vortex of fire and blue energy. With all this confusion, the essence of the world finally begins to manifest. By the goddess's will, a symbol with the 4 colors of the elements appears. When the director sees that, he realizes that this is very bad and prepares to intervene. Our protagonist then screams in pain as the blue energy takes over his entire body. With that, the Grandmaster uses the goddess's barrier to try to contain the boy's energy. Then an image of the goddess appears, and the director uses a seal to contain the boy's power. The seal manifests as two magic circles, one of water and one of earth, for the ritual. The energy then concentrates into a small creature that suddenly appears in the middle of the temple. Our protagonist then screams in pain from the pressure. The others wonder why the director sealed the boy and what that wave of power was. The director then shouts for Louis to calm down and not be influenced by what is happening. With that, the boy's hair turns black, and his eyes glow with a very intense blue energy. With a determined look, he finally manages to control the power, and the ritual stabilizes. With his hair now black, the protagonist finally calms down, surrounded by a serene blue aura. The boy wipes his sweat and says he almost lost his mind with all the confusion of the ritual. Looking at the elements, he realizes they are very similar to elementary particles. With this, he thinks that if the elements are like particles, he can manipulate their frequency. Focusing on the energy sphere, he begins to change the movement of the lights within it with his power. Suddenly, the particles multiply inside the orb, glowing with a new intensity. Then a large explosion of light occurs, with the 4 colors of the elements spreading everywhere. With that, the 4 basic elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, appear in front of our hero, and an immense wave of power is released by the young boy. The Grandmaster is completely shocked and speechless at the scene he is witnessing in the temple. The elemental energy continues to expand throughout the place with impressive force. The other students wonder what he did and say his aura is stronger than Neil's. The director then gives a smile and says that, as expected, the boy exceeded his expectations. Louis thinks that if magic is like particles, humans can use it just like monsters do. With that, the 4 elemental energies begin to flow. He then harmonizes the movement of the elements with the flow of QI and his body's breathing. The young man thinks he can create a magic crystal in his body and use magic like the Qigong technique. With his eyes closed, he concentrates, and the elemental lights enter his head all at once. Suddenly, a snowflake symbol appears in his eye. With that, huge ice crystals appear around him. With this, a teacher in the training room feels the cold energy and wonders what happened. The director, who observes him with a very serious expression, and wonders what element that is, as it looks very much like real ice. As everything around begins to freeze, he then realizes the elements are moving fast and seem to be fusing. With this, the boy thinks that depending on the combination, a reaction can create a new element. Meanwhile, the students flee the area, who end up being accidentally frozen, and the entire temple is filled with ice crystals. The Grandmaster points at the boy and asks in fright what on earth all of this is. The traitor's teacher begins to pray to the goddess and asks for a special blessing for himself. He then asks for the power of flame to protect the academy from all the boy's ice. With that, the man creates a huge barrier of flames to melt our protagonist's ice. The fire barrier surrounds the entire temple and begins to melt the ice crystals quickly. The students who were there that out. A huge wave of fire then collides with our protagonist's ice energy in the temple. And in the middle of the confusion, our protagonist stands there, totally chill. The entire temple is then covered in an intense light. In his office, one of the teachers notices the commotion and is very intrigued by the scene. Looking outside, he is startled by the energy and wonders what it all is, after all. In the training room, an instructor also feels the energy. Inside the temple, the academy's director faces our protagonist with a very serious look. He then asks what kind of element that was that looks so much like ice. With a blue aura around him, the boy remains very focused on the situation. He looks at the elements and notices that they are moving fast and fusing. With this, the young man thinks that by combining the elements, he can create a new elemental reaction. He then feels the energy of wind and water filling his body and doesn't know what to do. He decides he needs to talk to someone about what happened. Suddenly, he looks up and is surprised to see the director right in front of him. With that, the director points at the young man and asks what that strange energy is. While releasing his own aura, with a golden emblem in hand, the Grandmaster faces the situation with a very serious look. Aronian then asks angrily if the boy has any idea what he just did in that place. Our protagonist looks at the students and seems a little confused. With an awkward smile, he admits he messed everything up and thanks the director for saving him. The director turns to the boy and says he will return to his office, leaving the cleanup to him. He then calls the young man to come along, as he knows the boy has many questions to ask. With that, the two leave the temple, for the director's office. Once in the office, Aronian congratulates him and says he awakened all 4 attributes at once. With a confident smile, the young man confirms the academy director's words. He then shows his control and makes the 4 elemental spheres float in his hand. Aronian is shocked and says his talent is real because he already controls the elements smoothly. With that, the Grandmaster hands him a book and says it will help him study magic. He then tells Louis to ask Faye and Miliana for help, as they know the other elements. Suddenly, the director calls for a certain Kylie and tells her to enter his meeting room. With a green aura, a woman appears in the room, and the protagonist is surprised by the scene. The Grandmaster then introduces her as his trusted assistant to our protagonist. Aronian then reveals that from now on, the woman will be responsible for protecting the boy. With a serious look, Kylie tells him to go somewhere else, and the young man is very confused. Arriving in a training room, the director says he has reinforced the walls with his earth magic. The assistant then asks the boy to show her his new higher class element. With this, Louis explains that he discovered it by chance during the magical awakening ritual. He then reveals that by accelerating and mixing 2 elements, a new one is born with the power. With an intense glow, the boy says he has named his new ability the ice element. The director is surprised, as he has never heard of anyone who could mix the elements. Kylie is also impressed and says that element is indeed very cold, just as he said. Suddenly, the assistant gives a very sinister smile and prepares for what's next. With a leap, she charges at the boy and says she wants to feel his power. The woman then attacks Louis, who defends himself with his new ice power and faces her back. With an ice punch, our hero attacks, but the assistant manages to block the blow with her arm. The boy continues the attack with a very determined look on his face. The force of the attack throws her back, and she is completely shocked by his power. The woman then realizes she is slowed down and wonders if that is the power of ice. Without wasting time, the assistant advances with a powerful kick towards our protagonist. The director reveals that fusing elements is something that has never been done before in the history of magic. He continues, explaining that since the dawn of magic, people have studied its power relentlessly. Several geniuses dedicated their lives to magic, but none of them managed to fuse the elements. It is explained that most people only control one attribute, and very few can manage several. Even the genius Lady Marian from the eastern region only managed to control 3 elements at once. The woman then tried to fuse 2 attributes, but ended up failing quite disastrously. The Grandmaster reveals that her mind and body simply couldn't withstand the power. With this, our protagonist asks if normal humans can't handle the fusion of attributes. The director explains that it takes immense power to guide and release the elements from the body. If someone tried to guide several elements at once, they would collide inside the person's body. With that, the elements would clash, and the person would surely meet their end. The assistant then stares at the boy with a serious look and thinks about the implications of that power. She then realizes that the boy's potential could rival even that of a saint. With a fire aura around her, Kylie prepares to continue the training with the boy. With her eyes and hair on fire, she shouts that she wants to fight our protagonist once more. She then advances with a fire punch, but the young man blocks the attack with his ice arm. The director explains that the Saint Miriam once formulated a hypothesis about using multiple attributes. To withstand the collision of elements, one would need a dragon's body or to use crystals. This would allow them to use magic in the same way that monsters do from birth. Our protagonist then asks curiously what the results of that ancient research were. With a tired look, Aronian reveals that all of the Empire's experiments failed miserably. He adds that he never imagined someone could break that taboo of magic. Lewis explains that by circulating the elements through separate paths, he avoided a collision between them. Annoyed, Kylie kicks him and shouts for him not to get cocky and asks if he understands what this means. With a calm look, our protagonist replies that he understands the situation perfectly. As he remembers the past, he realizes that this could become a major source of trouble. The assistant warns him that if his secret gets out, there's no telling what might happen to him. She says the director ordered her to protect him, but she doesn't like trouble and tells him not to overdo it. The boy says he will say he awakened water and that the ice is just an application of it. The director is intrigued by the idea and asks what he means by magical application. The young man says his willpower is stronger and asks Kylie to attack him one more time. With a fire punch, the assistant charges at him to test his theory. With a smile, the boy creates a water barrier to defend against her fire attack. He explains that when water is subjected to intense pressure, it changes its state. With the ice barrier, the assistant's blow is blocked. The woman with glasses is completely shocked and can't believe what she just saw. Director Aronian is also impressed with what the young man just did in the room. Our protagonist then reveals his new ability called Superionic Ice Form. Confused, Aronian says that isn't magic and that he has never seen anything like it before in his life. Kylie asks how he turned water into an ice that radiates heat and doesn't melt with fire. The boy explains that he just used his knowledge of how liquids change under pressure. The director offers to help teach the boy and promises to give him credits for his discoveries. The assistant asks if the director will really protect him, as his magic isn't in the books. Aronian says he won't deny possibilities, as much magic was discovered by coincidence. The woman then accepts the decision and says the young man seems to be a very difficult student. Even so, with a fire aura around her, she affirms that she will protect him properly. She then creates a large sphere of fire while the director and the boy just watch everything. The director tells him to leave and gives him a mental recovery potion for his classes. Lewis holds the potion and is surprised to learn that there are magic items for the mind. Back in his room, he feels energized and decides to meditate until the next morning. But upon opening the door, our protagonist is in for a surprise and finds someone inside. A purple-haired person named Kara is sitting and asks why he is awake. The young man then approaches and asks if that person was waiting for him the whole time. Lewis thanks him for saving him earlier and asks how he noticed the rare artifact. With a serious look, the purple-haired boy just stares at him without saying a word. He then hands him a card from the Gandis Trading Company, and the young man understands everything. Our protagonist asks if Kara wasn't afraid of getting into trouble by helping him. The purple-haired boy just says thanks and then turns to leave the room in silence. The white-haired young man realizes that was a thank you and that he might need help. The next day at the academy, the students gather in the training hall for class. A muscular man introduces himself as Derek, the academy's physical training instructor. With a smile, he promises that with his help, everyone there will achieve perfect bodies. The students find him very strange, and one of them asks Lewis what he thought of the teacher. Our protagonist says the teacher is not wrong, as body and mind are the foundation of everything. With a surprised look, the instructor notices the young man's comment and becomes very interested. Suddenly, he moves at an incredible speed and appears in front of the two boys. The instructor approaches our protagonist and compliments him, leaving his friend shocked. He then grabs him and says his body is a work of art created by the goddess, and the young man is startled. The teacher shouts that he loves students who train hard, leaving the white-haired boy embarrassed. Derek compares him to the sons of rich families, and Lewis's friend gets very annoyed by the comment. The instructor ignores the question and thinks that the quality of the great families has declined greatly. He then says that before starting the class, the upperclassmen will demonstrate the equipment. One of the upperclassmen then comments that this year's freshmen don't seem very reliable. An upperclassman then arrives and says they even lost to commoners, not just the great families. With a look of contempt, he states that he will show the difference between apprentices and real fighters. Lewis's friend then comments that this is the academy's tradition to intimidate the freshmen. Instructor Derek tells them to stop talking and start the equipment demonstration. With a confident smile, one of the upperclassmen offers to be the first to show his skills. He approaches a machine and explains that this equipment is for training arms and chest. The boy reveals that the special thing about the machine is that the weights are enchanted with earth magic. With that, he starts training and reveals that each of the weights totals 1 ton. The freshmen are shocked to see the upperclassmen lifting 1 ton so easily. On another piece of equipment, a girl spins at an incredible speed without losing her balance for a second. Meanwhile, another upperclassman runs on a treadmill with 250 kilograms on each leg. Instructor Derek then says that now it's the freshmen's turn and asks them to be careful. One of the freshmen tries to use the weight machine, but he can't move it even an inch. Soon after, several students collapse on the floor, completely exhausted after trying to train. Another boy is thrown far away when he tries to run on the super heavy training treadmill. The upperclassmen then mock the freshmen and ask if they were coddled too much by their mothers. Suddenly, one of the upperclassmen gets scared and shouts that there is a monster among the freshmen. Our protagonist is using the machine with 10 tons, and the upperclassmen can't believe the scene. On the treadmill, the boy's speed is so great that it starts to smoke and looks like it will explode. To make matters worse, one of the freshmen starts spinning so fast that he ends up creating a tornado in the hall. With that, the upperclassmen are completely paralyzed and speechless at the freshman's power. The instructor wonders if they used drugs, but there's no reaction, and another freshman stands out. Suddenly, a red-haired boy lets out a shout in the hall. A redhead rookie punches the ground with the force of 15 tons, showing off all his power. On the treadmill, he runs with 2 10-ton weights on his shoulders like it's nothing. Seeing this, the upperclassmen are completely shocked by the rookie's absurd strength. The redhead then throws a 10-ton weight on the floor and says that this time he'll win the fight. He challenges our protagonist to forget the rest and decide who's the strongest. But Lewis doesn't even care and says the class is just basic training to strengthen the body. The boy continues, saying that showing off your strength to others is completely pointless. At this, one of the nobles gets angry and asks if the comment was aimed at him. He tells Lewis not to be arrogant just because he's strong and asks what his attributes are. The redhead then reveals with a smile that he has dual attributes of fire and earth. The others are surprised because a commoner awakening fire and earth would be a huge deal. Then Neil asks what the protagonist's attribute is, who reveals he has the water element. Hearing this, the noble who provoked him starts laughing mockingly and loudly. The group scoffs at him, saying his strength was wasted and asks if he's going to attack with puddles. Lewis doesn't understand the reaction and asks what's so funny about the water attribute. Other students explain that this element only has one main attack ability. One boy says that because it's more for defense and support, it's a power looked down upon by everyone. The protagonist stares at the element in his hand, wondering why it's so mocked. The nobles shout that his future is grim because there has never been a water grandmaster. They tell him to behave and stick to support, but Lewis tells Miliana not to worry. With a serious look, Lewis asks if someone with water can, at most, become a master. A noble then scoffs at him, saying that's common knowledge and that commoners know nothing. At this, Kane and his friends get angry and shout that the nobles are the ones who know nothing. The two groups face off, and a commotion is about to start among the students. But an upperclassman interrupts and asks the instructor if they were called up as examples. He explains that to use magic, you need to strengthen your body by taking hits on purpose. With that, the boy proposes a friendly match that can also serve as endurance training. He then faces Lewis, saying he'll show him firsthand how useless water is. Then Kane warns that he is Sheet's older brother and that he wants to take the boy down. The protagonist says no such thing as a better or worse attribute, and the upperclassman asks if he accepts. With his friends behind him, the young man agrees to fight the upperclassman to prove his point. The upperclassmen look at the group of freshmen with very mischievous smiles on their faces. Kane worries about his friend, but Lewis tells him not to worry because he'll be fine. The instructor then rules that magic can only be used in the central area of the hall. Additionally, he warns that it is strictly forbidden to dodge opponents' attacks. At this, the redhead starts laughing like a maniac with his mouth full of fire. He gets excited and shouts that he'll finally have a fair fight, surrounded by a fiery aura. With a very insane look, he shouts for the weaklings to come at him with everything they've got. Sheet's brother ignores the redhead and says he'll deal with the water boy first. The upperclassman then prepares to use his arcane martial art with a golden energy. Sheet's brother then uses a golden light and prepares his first attack in the arena. Our protagonist just stares at the light with a serious expression on his face. With that, the noble uses his technique and creates an earth armor around his body. He then charges forward, shouting for the water attribute trash to finally disappear for good. But to everyone's surprise, Neil appears and lands a fiery punch on the noble's face. With the impact of the explosion, the upperclassman is thrown far away and his armor shatters. The other upperclassmen are completely shocked by what they just witnessed. The redhead then says he thought the noble was just a big, complete weakling. Fallen on the floor, the upperclassman asks if he wants to be taken down and is shocked by his power. The leader then orders all the others to attack the redhead together to defeat him. With that, two upperclassmen advance with punches and kicks to attack the rookie in the arena. But the redhead just laughs and says that now the fight is getting interesting. He then defends against the blows of several upperclassmen at the same time without difficulty. With a wicked smile, he says their attacks don't even tickle him. The boy then blocks a kick from one of the nobles with his arm very easily. With a punch, he shouts that the upperclassmen are too weak and sends one of them flying. The force of the blow is so great that the other two upperclassmen are also sent flying. The armored noble gets up and sees the redhead's back is open for an attack. He seizes the chance and lands a full force punch on the top-ranked student's head. With a bruised face, the upperclassman wonders if he finally managed to land the hit. But the upperclassman's punch has no effect, and his earth armor shatters on impact. He is completely in shock, not understanding what just happened there in the arena. At that, the noble's hand gets badly injured, and he cries out in pain from the result of the attack. The redhead then says with a smile that the upperclassman's hit felt like a mosquito bite. The boy is shocked to see that Neil defended the attack with magic on a single point of his body. With that, the top-ranked student retaliates with a fiery punch toward the earth upperclassman. The blow is so strong that the noble flies and hits the wall on the other side of the hall hard. The instructor then tells everyone not to forget the basics so they don't end up like him. Pinned to the wall, the upperclassman is left stunned and completely humiliated in front of everyone. Startled by the scene, Kane asks Lewis if his friend didn't go a little too far. Taking advantage of the distraction, the other rookies begin to attack the upperclassmen in the hall. Lewis's friends shout that they won't let the nobles get close to the protagonist. With that, the students use their abilities, and the fight finally begins for real. Seeing the commotion, Lewis smiles because it's time for the main event of the night. He turns around and faces another upperclassman who had been watching him from a distance the whole time. The noble introduces himself as the heir of the Harry family and says he will teach him noble pride. He shouts that good manners are important and then stomps hard on the arena floor. The force of the stomp sends the protagonist into the air, leaving him vulnerable. At this, the hare prepares a wind technique with his hands to attack the boy. He launches a powerful wind attack towards Louis, who is falling from above. The upperclassman is surprised to see the boy's defense forming against his attack, but Louis creates a huge ice shield to defend himself, leaving the noble speechless. The ice shield holds firm against the powerful wind attack, even as it starts to crack. At this, the hare of the hairy family is in shock, as he didn't expect this turn of events in the fight. With the force of the impact, the upperclassman is thrown backward while the freshman stands his ground. The noble then wonders if that was really water magic, as he's never seen anything like it. With a smile, Louis confirms that it is, and says it's just an application of water magic. The protagonist then retaliates and launches several ice projectiles at his opponent. Miliana watches everything from a distance and is impressed by the power her friend has shown. The upperclassmen comment that they've never seen an ice shield and call the rookies annoying. The noble gets irritated with the situation and decides it's time to end this little game. Meanwhile, Neil appears out of nowhere and lands a punch on another upperclassman who is provoking him. The hare gives a smirk because he's not the least bit worried about the redhead. The top-ranked student continues his combo of blows and defeats another upperclassman easily. He then faces the noble and asks if he'll be his next punching bag in the brawl. The hare taunts him, telling him to try and hit him, and the redhead charges with a fiery punch. With a crazy smile on his face, the boy prepares his attack with maximum force in the arena. The blow generates a huge explosion that kicks up a large cloud of dust in the hall, but the punch is blocked and a green energy sends Louis flying into the air, to everyone's surprise. The redhead is furious and yells at the noble for attacking the protagonist in a cowardly way. The redhead shouts from above for them to stop running and fight fair and square. With that, he comes down with full force and creates a huge fire explosion in the middle of the arena. But Louis takes advantage of the distraction and attacks the noble with a gust of wind, sending him flying. He then says that the nobles talk about pride, but only know how to attack from behind without honor. The hare responds that as a noble, he simply made the right decision to win. At this, the upperclassman summons a bird and flies away while Louis complains that this is annoying. The top-ranked student ignores the upperclassman and attacks our protagonist with a flaming punch. The boy is pushed back and complains that fighting two at once is difficult. With a crazy smile, the hare seizes the chance and shouts that now is his time. He then launches a powerful wind attack from above towards the boy. But to everyone's surprise, the redhead gets in the way and accidentally hits the noble himself. The hare becomes furious and yells at the redhead not to interfere, calling him a complete lunatic. The top-ranked student asks why he doesn't understand that the best strategy is to team up. He then says that now that the nuisance is gone, the fight can finally continue for real. Seeing the scene, the instructor says that Neil is a combat genius and could surpass William. But Louis finally understands the attack pattern, and his eyes glow with a blue light. The protagonist dodges the redhead's blow and says that he's finally found his weakness. With a precise strike, he hits the opponent's chest and says that should stop him. At this, Miliana appears, shouting at her friend and saying that what he just did was dangerous. Our protagonist just holds the redhead's wrist, who seems to be in a lot of pain. The redhead gives a wicked smile and says that he finally managed to catch our protagonist in the arena. With that, he headbutts Louis and asks if the boy is feeling the pain of the blow. The top-ranked student then yells that the fun is just getting started and calls him an insect. Louis wipes the blood and says the rules forbid harming others and that Neil has crossed the line. With that, our protagonist uses his water magic and freezes the opponent's wrist with ice. But the redhead starts laughing manically and says that's not enough to stop him. He says the instructor told them to show off their bodies, so he won't run or hide. Hearing this, the boy creates a large ice wall to defend himself from the redhead's attack. With a serious look, the boy asks if his opponent prefers something a little more resistant. At this, the top-ranked student's body begins to be completely frozen by ice magic. The redhead then screams at the top of his lungs because the pain he's feeling is simply unbearable. With the scream, a huge burst of fire energy explodes and spreads throughout the battle arena. Our protagonist watches everything with a serious expression on his face, showing no fear. With his strength, the redhead manages to break the ice and free himself from our protagonist's magic. He then says that fighting the boy makes him stronger and shouts for them to continue the brawl. We see a flashback to the redhead's past where he wonders what real pain is. Before him appears a huge pack of wolves with red eyes, ready to pounce on him. The young boy looks completely exhausted and weak in the middle of the dark, rainy forest. Without a second thought, the wolves charge with full force toward the boy to attack him. Even at a disadvantage, he fights with all his might against the wolves, without fear of getting hurt. One of the wolves bites down hard on the young boy's arm, who holds it tightly. With great force, the boy pries open the wolf's mouth and cries out in pain from the wound on his arm. With a cry of fury, his eyes glow red, and he unleashes all his firepower. He then realizes that the pain he feels is the greatest proof that he is still alive. With his body all battered, he gives a very crazy smile because he liked the sensation of pain. The boy then says that pain is what makes him stronger and helps him evolve in battle. He believes that only the strongest can survive in this cruel world. With that, we see that he took down all the wolves by himself in the middle of the dark forest. It is for this reason that the young boy developed a strange taste for feeling pain. Back in the present, he shouts that he wants to feel even more pain and prepares to attack. The redhead jumps towards our protagonist and shouts his name to continue the fight. The redhead says the two of them are the same and calls the monsters hungry for more power. Louis then prepares for the attack and creates several water hands to defend against the blow. The water hands manage to catch the fire punch and stop the redhead's attack in mid-air. With that, he diverts the blow to the ground, causing a large fire explosion in the arena. The top-ranked student is impressed by the water boy's incredible skill in the arena. The protagonist then seizes the opportunity and lands a powerful kick on the opponent's head. But the redhead blocks the kick with his arm and smiles because he liked the pain he felt from the blow. The two begin to exchange several blows, and the redhead shouts that this is the best thing ever. Kane asks if it's a good idea to let Neil continue, and Miliana says to stop him after the fight. The redhead shouts that it's not over yet and advances with a punch full of fury and power. Louis dodges and thinks about how to stop his friend without breaking the school rules. With an ice strike to the back, the boy shouts for the top-ranked student to calm down once and for all. Then he leaps in the air and uses his ice storm technique against the opponent. The redhead is caught by the attack and gets trapped in a large ice wall, laughing at the pain. But he begins to use his fire magic to try to break free from the protagonist's ice. His hand glows with an intense fire energy that slowly melts the ice. His arms and legs are also surrounded by flames to help break the ice. The instructor watches everything with a smile and says the fight is getting very interesting. With his fire aura, he shatters the ice and says he won't go down that easily in the arena. With an insane look, he shouts that he wants to continue the fight and prepares to attack again. But out of nowhere, a powerful fire attack hits the ground and interrupts their fight. Lewis is surprised by the interruption and recognizes the person who just arrived. A girl with glasses steps on the fallen redhead and says he has gone too far with the brawl. With an annoyed look, she calls him a muscle-bound idiot and seems very angry about the situation. The instructor approaches her and says she's gotten even cuter since the last time. He asks if she forgot the principal's warning, but the girl tells the pervert to back off. The blonde man says her words hurt and that he was just testing the student's potential. Kylie says she hopes he's not just an idiot because she was sent to protect Lewis. Surrounded by fire, she informs him that the principal wants to see him and sent the message himself. The instructor creates a fireball and complains that it looks like he's going to get another lecture. He then looks at the students and wonders just how far the strength of these rookies can go. Meanwhile, Lewis and his friends celebrate their victory against the upperclassmen in the arena. The instructor tells the redhead to put on some clothes and warns that he'll let it slide just this once. Lying on the floor, Neil thinks he still can't handle a master's attack and that he'll go broke buying clothes. Just then, the academy bell rings, signaling the end of the class for all students. The blonde man then dismisses the upperclassmen and tells the rookies to rest and drink some potions. Kane then comments that in over 100 years of the academy, this is a very rare occurrence. The protagonist is confused and replies that he didn't see anything about this in the documents he read. His friend explains that it has only happened 3 times and that great masters emerged from those classes. Kane reveals that the most recent one was when their parents were students at the academy. Injured, the defeated upperclassmen plan to get revenge on the 2 rookies from behind the scenes. But the leader tells them not to rush, as they will have plenty of chances for revenge in the future. He says it doesn't matter how much of a genius they are because their fate is in their hands. Far away, a girl asks Miliana what she thought of the technique Lewis used. She replies that his talent is insane and that no one has ever used such strange techniques. At this, the girl becomes worried because she needs to create more attack options with her water attribute. Her friend then comforts her, telling her not to stress because she's only 16 years old. But Miliana replies that she needs to do her absolute best for the sake of her entire family. Her friend then shouts to Lewis and says that Miliana really wants to talk to our protagonist. The students wonder if it's a confession, and one of them says she looks like her mother. He approaches and her friend asks if he can teach his water magic to Miliana. With a smile, the boy agrees and says of course, because they are friends now. At this, the girl becomes thoughtful and repeats the word friends, quietly to herself. The protagonist is a little surprised by the blue-haired girl's unexpected reaction. She then warns that she might cause him trouble in the future and asks if he won't regret it. The young man replies that of course he won't and says with confidence that he would never betray his friends. But the girl still seems worried and says she doesn't want to drag him into her problems. With that, the young woman runs off and her friend shouts her name, very concerned. The friend then apologizes to Lewis and runs after Miliana to try and catch up to her. The boy smiles and thinks that everyone has their problems and maybe he's the most problematic one. With that, he turns to Kane and asks if his friend knows anything about Miliana. The blonde boy explains that she is the only daughter of the Royce family and the granddaughter of a grandmaster. He says the family lost influence after her grandmother's passing and that Faye knows more. The protagonist turns to Kara and asks if she has any information on the matter. The purple-haired girl replies that her family came into conflict with the association. The boy understands that her problem has to do with that and asks if she knows anything else. He then sighs and says it's all for now, and they have to ask them later. Elsewhere, a man tells the students to be quiet and says that magic is a blessing. He introduces himself as Sid and says he will teach them how to use magic and arcane martial arts. Kane asks his friend what's wrong, and Lewis says he feels like the new teacher hates him. At this, Sid appears and tells them both to be quiet because he hates having his class interrupted. The professor then takes a credit from both of them, leaving the young men very annoyed with the situation. He glares at Lewis and says that if he keeps breaking the rules, he'll soon be out of credits. The instructor takes another credit from the boy and tells him to learn to behave like a noble. With that, the professor shows off his magic and creates a large sphere of golden energy in his hand. Sid uses his power to summon a huge stone warrior with a spear and a shield. The 2 friends are impressed by the earth magic and the giant size of the golem. The master says that to fight for real, you need to master both magic and martial arts together. He says that first, they must learn to manifest mana in a weapon like an apprentice. As he creates an energy sword, he explains that after that, they will become a true fighter. The professor tells them to control their mana with their body, mind, and their own movements. Sid then swings the light sword and attacks the large stone statue with full force. The students are left speechless and completely shocked by the demonstration of power. He explains that this is arcane martial art and whoever deals the most damage to the statue earns credits. But first, he teaches them how to attack with magic and tells them to form groups by elemental attribute. The water students are sent to the side to practice arcane armor and warm-ups. 2 students then start laughing and mock the water users, calling them punching bags. They comment that she won't attack the statue and will never become a great master. Miliana clenches her fists with determination because she needs to prove her strength to a certain person. The boy approaches and asks if this person is from the association and what is happening. The girl gets nervous and says it's nothing and that it has nothing to do with him. Lewis then reflects on why his friend focuses so much on offense instead of support. She shouts that she wants to restore her family's honor, and for that, she needs to attack and defend. He replies that the goddess wouldn't create an incomplete attribute and that there must be an attack spell. Miliana reveals that she's tried everything, but water lacks the firepower to be a grandmaster. Just then, a student approaches and asks the girl to use a water shield for him to warm up. With a serious expression on her face, the young woman creates a water barrier to defend herself. The other student's attack is easily repelled by the girl's powerful water shield. Seeing the scene, our protagonist remembers his past life in a water master. In the past, he was mocked for studying martial arts even with his frail body. People called him a failure and stole all his important research. Ghosts from his past told him to give up on his dreams and just wait for his end. Back in the present, he smiles because the girl doesn't give up, even knowing her weakness. The protagonist then decides that just as he did with Cain, he will show her a new path. He approaches and places his hands on the girl's shoulders to guide her mana flow. With that, he creates a huge ice shield that defends against another student's attack. Louis says he believes in water's potential and asks his friend to watch his technique. He then raises his hand and calls out to the instructor, asking to attack the statue too. Sid glares at him and warns that if he doesn't cause any damage, he will lose credits in today's class. Louis denies it and says he thought of a better way to increase water's attack power. The other students mock him, saying that with pure water, he won't even make a scratch. Miliana gets worried and says the statue is a rare artifact that water won't damage. But the boy comforts her and tells her not to worry because he has a plan in mind. With that, he walks alone into the arena, preparing to attack the stone statue. He then picks up some sand and thinks of a saying from his world about the weak overcoming the strong. With the sand in his palm, the boy prepares to use a very powerful technique. At this, he combines the sand with high-pressure water and launches it at high speed. This combination becomes a powerful weapon capable of cutting through anything in its path. The blue energy shines brightly as the young man prepares his special attack. With a swift motion, the protagonist launches the jet of water and sand at the statue. The students don't understand what he did, but upon closer inspection, they are completely in shock. The attack goes through the golem's shield as if it were nothing and cuts it with ease. Seeing the result of the technique, Professor Sid is left speechless and utterly shocked. The powerful blade of water and sand cuts the statue's shield in half with absurd precision. With a smile on his face, Louis shows everyone the true power of water magic. Later that night, the three friends walk together through the academy's courtyard. Cain comments that the look on Professor Sid's face when he saw the attack was a true work of art. He says the professor turned pale and ran out of the room as soon as the class was over. Our protagonist says he was so focused that he didn't even notice the professor's reaction. Cain says that regarding the water magic, they should follow Faye's suggestion because she tries so hard. He tells him she plans to rent the training room for extra practice with Miliana. Carr is shocked by the absurd prices, and the two friends are left speechless by the costs. With that in mind, Louis turns to the purple-haired girl and asks her for a favor. He remembers they have a training mission in a few days and already starts to devise a plan. The instructor then congratulates the students on their growth and says they will be doing academy missions. He explains that the academy is connected to a large forest that was once monster territory. Many monsters still live within this forest, with the strongest ones residing in the center. The monsters on the outskirts, however, are not as special and are much weaker than the others. Therefore, the academy sends students on missions to eliminate these monsters from the forest. The monsters' magic crystals can be exchanged for credits, and the top student gets a bonus. But if anyone needs rescuing for fighting something too strong, they will lose a credit on the mission. The readhead gets excited about the idea of hunting monsters and says he can finally let loose. The protagonist says he plans to use real combat to train Miliana on the mission. He then proposes that the five of them form a team for the monster hunting mission in the forest. Faye asks what Miliana thinks of the idea, and the blue-haired girl accepts on the spot. With the deal sealed, the team of 5 friends is finally formed for the new mission. The instructor says the 5 of them will go on the mission with some upperclassmen to learn from them. The upperclassman glares at Louis and says they meet again and not to get taken out on the mission. Our protagonist smiles and replies not to worry as people grow with danger. The leader of the upperclassmen glares at Louis's group and calls them a bunch of arrogant brats. He then orders his team not to help the rookies if a fight breaks out in the forest. Cain whispers that the upperclassmen will lure them into the forest to fight stronger monsters. But Louis says that's a good thing, as strong monsters drop much more valuable magic crystals. With that, the group of nobles led by the boy with the bow and arrow enters the dark forest. Right behind them, our protagonist team follows closely for the start of the hunting mission. The two groups then walk side by side towards their first destination in the vast woods. One of the upperclassmen comments that the forest was behemoth territory and suggests a fight. He mocks the rookies and says they can't even handle a fighter-class monster. But suddenly, a huge bear paw smashes into the ground right in front of the students. The noble who is mocking them is completely terrified by the monster's appearance. Before them, a giant bear with red eyes appears, and he identifies it as a great bear. The upperclassman climbs a tree and says he's just going to watch, because the monster is nothing to them. However, the leader of the upperclassmen thinks that bear is one of the strongest in the region. Without wasting any time, Louis shouts for everyone to assume their battle positions against the monster. The enormous great bear lets out a very loud roar and prepares to attack the group of students. Faye then charges forward with her flaming sword and attacks the monster with a powerful fire strike. The girl's attack explodes on the bear's chest, but she is sent flying by the impact. With a swipe of its paw, the creature sends Cain flying into the air, leaving him vulnerable. But the blonde boy uses his wind magic and lands several cuts on the bear before hitting the ground. Cain then shouts that the monster's hide is as tough as rock and the blows have no effect. With that, the great bear retaliates with a powerful paw swipe that cracks the entire forest floor. But a fire arrow hits the monster squarely, making even more irritated by the attack. The arrow explodes in flames, but the bear's thick hide withstands the impact without major issues. Carr fires the arrow, and Louis congratulates her on her excellent aim and very precise attack. The great bear becomes even more furious with the hit and prepares to attack the group again. At this, Miliana steps forward and uses her water magic to trap the huge creature in mid-air. Her technique then envelopes the monster with several water chains, completely immobilizing it. With that, the great bear is trapped inside a whirlpool with no way to escape the blow. She prepares to use her arcane martial art and end the fight once and for all. With a powerful spin, the girl throws the huge creature into the air with her water magic. The monster then falls hard into a nearby river, kicking up a large amount of water. Lewis is surprised by the scene, and Faye explains that it's an original technique by Miliana herself. With a smile, the protagonist finds his friend's combination very interesting and powerful. Seeing her ability, he decides he can't be left behind and advances into the forest. He then runs towards the great bear, which is still recovering from the girl's blow. The protagonist prepares for a frontal assault and faces the monster with a serious look. With a leap, the boy launches several water blades at the giant creature. Lewis then concentrates his mana and creates a sphere of blue energy in his hands. The boy combines the water with another magic and prepares an attack even more powerful than the last. He launches the combined energy sphere at the monster, which is still in the air. The energy sphere hits the great bear squarely with an explosion of light and steam. On impact, the monster lets out a roar of pain and is thrown backward by the force. Lying on the ground in a large crater, the great bear is finally defeated by the group. The friends are shocked, as they didn't expect water magic could cause so much damage. The protagonist explains that he used steam to cause internal damage since its hide was tough. Miliana then wonders if she can also use this technique with her water magic. With that, he tosses some rings to his friend, who is left confused about what's happening. The girl is surprised by the gift and asks her friend what those rings are. Louise reveals that the magic rings allow her to also use the elements of earth, fire, and wind. With a smile on her face, the girl thanks him for the gift and puts the rings on her fingers. But suddenly, a powerful fire attack appears out of nowhere and heads towards the students. The huge fireball goes towards Miliana, and someone shouts her name very loudly. The young woman is completely frozen in fear, not knowing how to react to the surprise attack. With that, the fire magic explodes with full force, kicking up a large cloud of dust and smoke. The trail of destruction left by the blow is enormous and extends throughout the forest. The blue-haired girl is left speechless by the scene, unable to believe what happened. The upper part of the bear's body was completely destroyed by the powerful fire magic. The upperclassman who is watching them is shocked, because the great bear's body simply vanished. Lewis then senses a strange presence and warns his friends that something is approaching them. Out of nowhere, a tree is knocked down, and the sound of the impact echoes throughout the large forest. The upperclassman in the tree turns completely pale with fear, because he recognizes the creature. He then shouts that a pack of blaze kongs has appeared to attack everyone there. One of the fire monsters roars loudly, showing off all its strength to the students. Hiding, Kane asks what kind of monster it is and says the situation is very bad. He explains that it's a creature that shouldn't even be near the academy. At this, the group is shocked to see that a pack of them appeared and devoured the beer. Worried, the friends think that the other students might also be in danger. Elsewhere, the upperclassmen face a monster, and one of them shouts to call a professor. Far away, a boy holds a defeated noble and wonders what is happening. But Neil faces one of the fire monsters and seems very excited for a new fight. With a wicked smile on his face, the raidhead says the situation just got very interesting. One of the upperclassmen then fires a flare and shouts for everyone to run from there. Lewis realizes that if monsters that shouldn't be there have appeared, something is wrong. At this, the upperclassman in the tree is cornered by one of the monsters and has no way out. Scared, he uses his magic and creates a large earth armor to defend himself. But the monster attacks with a powerful punch and shatters the noble's armor with ease. Lying on the ground in a crater, the upperclassman is completely defeated by the creature. Another monster then grabs one of the students by the head with great force. The boy is completely terrified by the situation and screams in pain and fear. But seeing the danger, Lewis uses water magic to save the student from the monster. The water attack pushes the two creatures far away, creating a shockwave in the woods. With that, the protagonist shouts for Kara and Miliana to grab the upperclassman and run. The group helps the injured, and Faye tells Lewis not to worry because she will catch up to him. At this, one of the blaze kongs prepares a large fireball to attack the young students. Seeing the attack, the three friends shout for everyone to dodge as quickly as possible. With that, the monster fires a powerful blast of fire towards the students. Kara carries one of the injured upperclassmen while Miliana runs to escape the attack. Kane then says there's no other choice, and they need to fight together to win. He then uses his wind magic to speed up and dodge the fire blast. With two wind daggers in his hands, the blonde boy prepares to attack the creature. But the blaze kong is not intimidated and charges with a powerful punch at the boy. The young man dodges and uses his wind stab technique on the monster's back. At this, Faye attacks it with her weapon, but the blow doesn't work on the muscular monster. She then says she'll show the creature how to really fight in the forest. With a large pillar of fire, the girl attacks the blaze kong with all the power she has. Kane watches the scene and complains that his friend is a complete muscle. Head. The girl uses her sacred spear and rising fall technique against the creature. The blow hits the monster squarely and causes a large fire explosion on the ground. With the explosion, the creature's power core is finally exposed for everyone to see. Kane then says his friend is a complete muscle. Head. The girl uses her sacred spear and rising fall technique against the creature. The blow hits the monster squarely and causes a large fire explosion on the ground. With the explosion, the creature's power core is finally exposed for everyone to see. The several magic crystals then scatter through the air with the force of the blow's impact. With the monster defeated, Faye celebrates the victory with a very confident smile on her face. But Kane shouts for her not to let her guard down, and the girl doesn't understand the warning. At this, another monster appears and launches a powerful fire blast at the girl. To protect her, Lewis creates a huge ice shield and defends against the monster's attack. The protagonist then reinforces the defense and increases the size of the ice shield even more. With his water magic, he creates a large ice prison to trap the creature. The monster is then completely frozen and trapped in the middle of the dark forest. The boy thanks his friend, and she is shocked because she didn't believe the monster was still alive. Even trapped in the ice, the blaze kong's eyes are still full of hatred and fury. Faye shouts for her friend to be careful and pushes him away from the fire monster. With its strength, the creature manages to break the ice and free itself from the protagonist's magic. To everyone's surprise, the monster's wounds begin to heal rapidly. The friends are shocked because they had never heard of them healing so quickly. With a serious expression on his face, Lewis feels a very strange sensation coming from the monster. He then remembers Neil and realizes the sensation is the same as from the fight with the redhead. Elsewhere, the Reedhead lets out a maniacal laugh and shouts that the fight isn't over yet. Meanwhile, one of the upperclassmen rips the core out of one of the defeated fire monsters. Lewis glares at the other monsters and says the situation is getting really annoying. Faye notices that their wounds are closing and that there's something wrong with the creatures. Seen through a monster's legs, the group of friends seems to be completely cornered. With a bead of sweat on his face, the protagonist faces the situation with great seriousness. Surrounded by the creatures, the group realizes the situation is bad and there's nowhere to run. Shortly after, all the friends end up on the ground, completely exhausted and defeated. The leader of the upperclassmen smiles and says his preparations are ready for the final plan. He then reveals that he will use the defective monsters to finally eliminate our hero. With that, the monsters ignore the others in charge with full force towards Lewis. One of the creatures roars loudly and unleashes a powerful fire aura for the attack. Kane is shocked to see that the monsters can use arcane armors like fighters. With a stomp, the creature sends all the students flying with its absurd strength. Our protagonist manages to land on the ground but loses his balance from the impact of the blow. He then realizes that the monsters are targeting only him and wonders why. At this, one of the creatures creates a huge sphere of fire and prepares for the attack. The monster then launches the large fireball with full force at our protagonist. Seeing the power of the attack, the young man is completely shocked and momentarily frozen. He then finds himself surrounded by several monsters preparing the same powerful attack. His friends scream Louis's name in desperation as they run to try and help him in the forest. With that, the fireballs merge and create a huge explosion that destroys everything around it. From a distance, the leader of the upperclassmen watches the scene of destruction with a smile on his face. He then celebrates the success of his operation and believes he has finally eliminated the boy.